Hey, welcome back to the Goodest cast, fucking kings and queens out there. Hey, sorry it's been a while. Sometimes we got shit we gotta deal with in this life, and I hope you're all doing well out there. And on that note, it's a good thing you waited, because this episode we have Mark Hutchinson of Slide Squad. Slide Squad is one of the original drift teams in the US, potentially the first. They were doing team drifting in the 90s. The other half of that is Dave. And they would just go to the mountains in Southern California constantly. Mark is a highly technical guy. He worked for tuning shops in Japan. Dave went out to Japan also, so they were out there posting content from Japan in the early 2000s that I'm sure you've seen the watermark Slide Squad on some of those like OG clips. Which is just awesome. And Mark even talks about like how back in the day, an SR swap, it was unheard of to use the factory ECU, and even like Jim Wolf was like, no, it's impossible. You have to use the KA ECU and do like a distributor setup on the SR and like all kinds of wild stuff. And he was actually one of the first people to figure it out. So it's an honor to have, OGs like Mark on this podcast. We're lucky to be able to talk to them. And we appreciate you guys, and I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Check it out. Hey, what's up, all you Canna curious eater peoples? Dude, Canna Munch. It's that not put you on the floor type of edible, It's that nice summer day, sit at the park, and not question existence kind of edible, And we want to support women-owned businesses. We want to support people who are into cars, and the owner of Canna Munch is both of those things. So what's to lose? Like, get that nice buzz, get that nice summer buzz, and just relax, because we all need to relax. I know you do. I know I do. Dude, Canna Munch, get some. CannaMunchCA.com. Canna Munch CA on IG. They're available in Bay Area dispensaries. It's a snack, dude. If you want to eat a couple, dude. You'll be floating on a cloud. If you want to wonder if clouds are alive, eat the whole bag, But be responsible. Be responsible. It's important. Anyway, if you want to look like a snack while having a snack, Canna Munch CA. Get some, dude. Hey, everybody. I'm here to tell you about my tire savior, Tire Streets. What? Tire Streets. They got acceleras, and that's what I use on my drift car. And if you want to save money on them, we use the 651s, and Goodest Cast has you covered. Goodest 651 for 20% off. The Accelera 651s. Check them out. Goodest 15, I think, is everything else is 15% off. Dude, we're saving you money on tires, all right? And they're taking over, dude. One city at a time. Tire Streets. You see an Acceleras at every event, and you're like, where are they coming from? They're coming from Tire Streets, bro. They're coming from Tire Streets. And they're a big supporter of the podcast. They're a big supporter of our friends who drift. What? People who drift that we also... What? More teams that we like run on Accelera 651s from Tire Streets. So if you want to support the homies, then get some Tire Streets tires. Accelera product placement ad. So good at ads. I see you got some RC cars, some vintage RC cars.
I do. I know you used to do RC stuff back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I took a break from it for a while. I mean, I did RC as a kid, and that was like something I was super into. Like, I couldn't have a real car, so might as well get an RC car and dump my money into that, my hard-earned money from mowing grass and that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, I got the ones I wasn't able to have as a kid, right? So now as an adult, I can go back and get those and waste my money on those.
Yeah. RC cars are good. Like, well, you can't really I don't know, you can't like go karting at Scandia
Yeah.
all the time, but you
Yeah,
couldn't mess with
exactly.
RC cars.
Right. Yeah, you can just bash like with your friends, just down the street, or to see how many backflips you can do off a jump that you make or something, and then you break it, and then yeah, you got to save up some money to fix the suspension or whatever. You break the chassis in half, which I've done a couple times, but it's all part of the fun, right?
Yeah, so this has been a lifelong thing for you. You were
Well,
you're a
I
car.
took a break for a while. I mean, I got into it like in, I don't know, seventh grade, and then I really got into it like probably around ninth grade and started doing it competitively. Up in Washington, they have a raceway up there where I would race it like in the championships, like for the country. And so, yeah, some 13-year-old kid, like, racing against these guys that are in their 30s and 40s that are sponsored and stuff. And so, that was always fun. And, I took home some victories and got some trophies still from that.
Sick.
But I mean, that taught me a lot actually, because about cars in general, because setting up a car, like knowing how the suspension can react to your changes, like, oh, I'm going to put different weight shock oil in there, or I'm going to increase the spring rate, or, I'm going to change my camber settings or my alignment, the differentials are adjustable as well. So I would adjust the differential for some certain tracks to make it drift more, So that was kind of an early way of how like I kind of got into drifting was playing with RC cars. So some guys couldn't figure that out the track. Like on some corners, the tight corners, I'd be using drifting techniques to get around them, and other guys are going super slow around the corners, and but yeah, sideways was the way to go. Kind of like rally racing. If you've ever seen like, rally or Group B rally back in the day, was like the epitome of rally racing. But I mean, same techniques. And anyway, yeah, it was fun, and I kind of got burnt out on it after a while. And once I was able to get a real car, I kind of left RC in the dust. No pun intended. So, but yeah, I recently picked it up again a couple of years back during the pandemic. Like being on lockdown, it's just like you got to find something to do. So it's like, I still got these old RC cars that are in cardboard boxes in the garage that I haven't touched in decades. Let me get them out and take them all apart and restore them back to their former glory, which was fun. And then come to find out they're worth so much money now. It's crazy. Like
Really?
people are paying thousands of dollars, like for an RC10, special edition, like that it's hard to find. Right. So, yeah, it's wild. I mean, compared to back then, you could get something for a couple $100. And, but yeah, I mean, that's the world we live in. Is even cars are more expensive these days, right? And look at a 240 SX. So
Yeah.
there's got to be a millionaire to buy one of those things these days. So.
All right, we're talking RC and cars going up in value.
Yeah.
I messed around with RC a little bit. I never like really did any racing, but I do have some like old Team Associated stuff in a box. And now that you told me it's worth a bunch of money, I might go on eBay and find out what I'm sitting on.
Yeah.
Because I'm all in on the car stuff. I might regret. I'm probably gonna hold on to like one of the chassis. I got a couple. So when I was talking about being a lifelong thing, is like cars a lifelong thing, or was like RC how you got into cars, or was it?
Yeah. Okay. Getting into cars was from my dad. So I was born in England. My family's from there, and England has a huge motorsports community. A lot of is talking about rally. Rally is really big over there. Just road racing in general. Formula One's huge. Motorcycle, like MotoGP stuff. So my dad was always into that when I was a kid. And so he always had a car or a motorcycle he was messing around with. So, yeah, I would watch him work on the stuff in the garage. And, I was that annoying little son that was just, can I help? What can I do? He's like, get out of here. I'm just getting in the way. So, but yeah, I, would play with those little cheap RC cars that were like, $10, whatever. And when I was 5 years old, and just played with them until they broke, just because I, couldn't get enough of it. Hot Wheels and that kind of thing. But yeah, just watching racing on TV, I always was just like captivated by it. I knew I had a connection to it. And it never really stopped. Some kids go through phases, they go through their soccer stage or their football stage or whatever. But I mean, yeah, cars has just always been in my blood. And yeah, I don't see it ever ending. I mean, I'm 45 now, so you think it would have fizzled out by now, but it's a curse and a blessing, I guess, in the same way, because it's like I spent so much time and money on this stuff, but I couldn't see my life like being any other way. You know what I mean?
No way. Like just watching on IG all the stuff you're doing with that FC build, I'm like, I hope I hope I have that level of detail when I'm working on stuff when I'm 10, 15 years from now. Like I just like I love to see it. Like I enjoy watching that, because I'm like, okay, this is a level of nerdy that I can appreciate heavily.
Well, thanks, dude. I appreciate that. Yeah, like I mean, the FC, when I was younger, I wasn't as detail oriented. Let's put it that way. So, like on my first blue S13, yeah, right. I mean, you hardly have any money. You just want a car that can go fast and look cool, and that's all you care about. You're like, no one's gonna see underneath the car; they're gonna see the outside, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm still in that realm, and the outside isn't looking so good.
But at least you use the car, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, but through the years, I've appreciated more so of like, well, my motto is, if you build it cheap, you build it twice. So might as well do it right the first time. So, yeah, just I know I'm not going to be happy with it if I don't do it like the way I want it to be done. So, like, I'm in the middle of replacing all the suspension bushings. I mean, it's such a pain of like just taking all the suspension subframe out and everything else, and just burning out the bushings. The neighbors are like smelling weird smells, going, "What's going on over there?" But
oh yeah, sorry you didn't get an invite to the barbecue.
Yeah, right. But like I know, like in the end, it's gonna feel like a brand new car. And just that's how I want it. I wouldn't want it any way else. Because yeah, for me, like I said, going back to my blue S13, this is going back to 1997. The subframe bushings were so shot in that thing. Like, I mean, you go around a corner, even just a regular corner at like normal speed, you can feel the rear end just like shifting around. You're like, so drifting was way worse. Like it would just skip around, like you're like, it feels like a broken roller coaster, And I was running an open diff because there was no LSDs at that time like available in the US except for the VLSD. Or welding your diff. So, but no one welded their diff at that point because no one was into drifting. So, it was more of a muscle car thing, like, for drag racing, like, oh, you have an old 60s Mustang, you weld the diff.
Throw a spool in it.
Exactly, spool. Yeah, there you go.
Heck yeah, brother.
USA. So, yeah, once I got a VLSD, it definitely improved things, but there was no subframe spacers or anything available really still yet. Like parts were hard to find. So I just lived with it. And then eventually I'm like, I need to get rid of this car. I need to build something else, something like a level up. And that's when I sold that like in, I don't know, 2001. I got an A86. I thought that would be a step up. I kind of started back at square one because it was like a $500 GTS hatchback that was like roached out, with like 200,000 miles, like engine smoking like crazy. All the bushings were shot. Same thing, like needed complete restoration. But being impatient, I'm like, I'll just throw in like a JDM red top motor. I did that and put in some suspension that Hiroshi Takahashi brought over on a plane when he visited the US for free. I'm like, yeah, this is old junk. You can just have it. I'm like, dude, like, hell yeah. So, put that in. The car felt way better, but I mean, still, it ran like garbage. The transmission was destroyed, and the paint was torched, so I was like rattle canned it black, but whatever. Like it was still fun to drive and hard car to drive like sideways, like that's when you really know like
they make you work for it.
Yeah. Like, I mean, if you can drive an 86 like really well, I think you can drift anything. And so, I tried to improve my skills and it did help quite a bit. But I got to the point where I'm like, dude, I just want high horsepower. I don't want to deal with like 110 horsepower at the crank anymore. Like it's cool, but like, you're trying to keep up with your buddies that are just totally blasting ahead. So that's when I built my RB25 S13. It was a red car, and no one had really done RB25 in a S13. But I'm like, this seems like
what was that like? Like, I mean, this is pre forums. This is pre like
yeah, exactly. There was no real information back then of how to do it. I mean, so Karoy, he had that yellow S13.
Yeah,
he had an RB26 in it, right? And I saw. Yeah, RIP for sure. So when I saw that car, I was like, dude, that is awesome. And it sounded so good. And this is at a point where we couldn't have a Skyline in America, right? So Motor X was around, but like that was unobtainable. I couldn't have one of those cars. So I'm like, well, next best thing, let's just put a Skyline engine in my damn S13.
I feel like that's very relatable to people even today.
Oh, for sure, right? And I was thinking, well, the car's a lot lighter than a Skyline as well. It's easier to work on and stuff. So yeah, just spent some time, like just bought a stock junk S13, just tore it all apart down to bare chassis, went through it, painted the car myself. I'm like, oh, it'd probably take like a month to paint the car. Nah, 6 months, dude. So much body work and sanding, primering, more sanding. Painting it and then color sanding, and dude, it came out really nice.
A little bit more work than painting an RC body.
It's a little bit, yeah. But it came out pretty nice. But then like I was too afraid to mess it up because like you put all 6 months of work into something. And it's like, do I want to drift this car? Do I want to ruin it? But you get over that very quickly. As soon as like you get that first bit of damage, you're like, whatever.
Yeah. You're like, I got pictures of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll remember it.
Right. So yeah, the RB25, I mean, they were dirt cheap because no one was putting them in their car at that point. So you get a complete motor set for $1,200. Transmission, ECU, everything, wiring harness.
How did you figure out how to wire this up? Like what skill set did you have prior to even take on something like this? Because I can't imagine.
Yeah, it's definitely not, I would say, for the first timer DIY guy. So I learned a lot from doing my first SR swap. So I did an SR swap in '97. I think it was probably like the 4th or 5th swap in the country that had been done at that time. And so, again, same thing, like the SRs were pretty cheap because no one bought them. No one knew what they were. I went to an engine importer and it's just sitting in the corner. I'm like, yeah, I want that. They're like, that thing? I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever.
That blows my fucking mind.
Yeah, like it was all just Honda motors. It was all like B16s, ZC, Type R motors, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, just one SR is all they had in the whole place of like 200 motors. But so anyway, I took a Japanese class, a couple in college, of how to read and write Japanese. So that helped a lot. So I was able to get the Japanese wiring diagram for the SR, translate it to English, and with the help from a friend, I was able to get it running. And I was just stoked. I remember people saying at that time, "You can't. There's no way you can get it to work with a direct fire SR ignition. Like it doesn't work." This is Jim Wolf Technologies telling me that, like Clark Stepler from Jim Wolf. And he's like, you have to use the SR20 DE rear-wheel drive distributor with plug wires, and then we will reprogram your KA ECU, and you have to chop up your wiring harness to make it all work together. That's the only way you can get these engines to run, right? And so I did that at first. I'm like, okay, I took his word for it. I did that.
No way.
and the car ran like garbage. Like it was so slow. Like I remember taking it to the drag strip and like at 14 pounds of boost, it ran like a 15.9. I'm like, dude, this is
That's not right. Yeah.
no, it's like a KA, like not much improvement, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, something's off. So I'm like, screw this setup. So that's when I got the stock SR harness and direct fired ignition, all that, and figured out how to make it work. And after that, dude, it was like night and day. I mean, it woke it up, you know. All of a sudden I'm running like 12.5 in a quarter mile, you know. I took it to the drag strip and I'm like, okay, this is good.
Yeah, we like this.
Yeah. So anyway, you know, obviously the torque band had increased as well, and it was a lot better for drifting because I was pretty bummed out once I got it running. I thought, well, man, I spent all this time and money, and is this what it is? Because I didn't know anyone else with an SR20 at that point. But yeah, once it was dialed in, that's when I was like, okay, this is cool. But no one else knew what it was. I go to the street races. You know, street races was a big thing back then, like in the late 90s.
This is way before SR20s pulled a premium.
Yeah, right. And so you know, mostly
marks the reason SR20s pulled a premium.
I want some royalties for that. But so yeah, you go to street races, it's all like Camaros and Mustangs and some rotary guys there too, and that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, people would look at my engine and would, yeah, I'll race you, because they didn't know what it was. They thought it was just a KA with like a candy apple red painted valve cover. So I'm like, cool, man. Yeah, let's go. You know, I'd race a 5.0 or whatever Mustang and just smoke them. Yeah. And there's like, ugh. And then they get all mad and like, oh, you're squeezing, you know, you're using nitrous, you know. I'm just like, dude, no, it's a stock Japanese engine. Take a look. But people didn't really appreciate the SR20 at that time. Actually, I remember one guy, he actually took it upon himself to alleviate himself on my car. Yeah, so I'm standing there talking with some buddies, and I turn and I look, because I hear this, like, you know, liquid noise hitting the ground. I'm like, what? Sounds like someone peeing. And I look over, and the dude's straight up peeing on my door. I'm like, hey, what the? And he's like, and he was like half drunk too, but still, he was just like, I hate this car, man. Get it out of here. And his buddy's like, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. He's, you know, he doesn't like imports, but it's like, okay, whatever. You know, he peed in my car, I hose it off. But yeah, it's just people hated imports at that point, you know. Yeah. It was the whole Honda versus American muscle car deal back then, but we've come a long way, obviously, since then. But anyway, it was just fun going through.
We're a little bit more unified. Just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got a long way to go, though.
Yeah. Well, what was funny is once I put the Sylvia front end in my car, people mistook it for a Galant. It was like, is that a Galant, dude? I'm like, what? No. You know, no one knew what it was. No one cared. No, people just like.
So like that's the crazy thing to me. Like, how did you, you know, like you said, drifting, like, you know, you slid the RC cars, like, yeah. How did you like, you obviously you were one of the first people in the US to actually really understand like drifting and the like aesthetic and essence of it. Like how did you get there? Like it blows my mind. Like, cause I mean, it's like literally like discovering upon like this thing that is now, I'm sure you look at it today and you're like, what the fuck happened? Like, it was like me and like 5 other people in the US, and now it's like this phenomenon. Yeah.
And it's, you know, back then I had no idea it would turn into what it is today. Back then, to be into it, like how I discovered it, like most people, is just, you know, you see an option magazine and you see an option video and you're like, whoa, I've never seen anything like this. This, like, it just sparks something in your brain instantly, right? Where you're just like, this is cool. Like this, I want to do this. So, but you know, again, no one being into it in the US at that point, pretty much a handful of people, right?
Well, it made the barrier of entry like almost impossible. Like,
right. Yeah. I mean, there was no drift events back then. This is going back to, you know, 1995 when I first saw what it really was. And, you know, a buddy in my class in Japanese class in Moore Park College, showed me the option magazine. I was like, what are they doing? Like, wait a second, that's an S13 going sideways. What the,
Yeah.
So that's what, like, I had to find out more. And I knew there was a Japanese video shop in the valley, like half an hour away, that rented videos, Japanese car videos. I'm like, let's go there. Let's check it out. Started renting the videos, and it's like, oh, whoa, okay, yeah, this is awesome. And so from there, it's like I knew I had to get into it somehow, but it's like, how do you get into it
Yeah.
when there's no support here, right? You can't just like go on eBay and just buy like everything you need for your car, right? Like you can today. So it was a tough process, like to get there.
Was the challenge of it, like, I feel like you seem like the type of person where like the challenge of it is like part of the enjoyment.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I do like the challenge. So I knew, number one, like my stock single cam KA was not going to cut it. It was on its last leg. And I mentioned this in Benson's podcast, but it blew up on for the second time, like within a year. I was like, okay, I'm done with this, So that's like, I'm making a decision right now. I'm drawing the line in the sand. I'm getting an SR20, So that's when like the ball started rolling. And I didn't know how to do the wiring, right? I didn't know if anything even the motor would bolt in. Like I had no idea,
That's
but I'm
crazy.
like,
yeah,
you just got to go for it, just do it, right?
Yeah.
So
like, I'm gonna get the motor. We're gonna put it in the car.
Yeah, we'll make it fit. So, so yeah, I got the motor set. By my surprise, it bolted right in. But then like I needed a downpipe. Again, you can't just go buy a downpipe from any old site that you can today. Had to custom make a downpipe, custom make the intercooler piping at an exhaust shop. The wiring, that was a chore, right, to figure out. So yeah, once I got it down, like I did the SR swap for a buddy, like a couple years later, did it in a weekend. It's like 10 hours total. It's easy once you figure it out. But when you don't know how, it's definitely more challenging. But even like suspension, like back then I had some like KYB stock like level shocks with some iBox springs that were cut like 2 coils, and like that was what was available back then. There was not all the options again we have today until Apex USA opened up. Apex then started bringing in all their stuff from Japan. So I special ordered some Apex N1 spec coilovers, and not cheap, like $2,500. And that was back then, right?
Yeah.
So back then, money back in 1997, 98, whatever.
Yeah, that's like $5,000 easy.
Yeah, but I'm like, I gotta have
Maybe
good
less.
stuff. Yeah, maybe less. I don't know, $4,000 or something at least, right?
But still,
so
that was a lot of money.
Yeah. Again, that was the only option I really had, besides like going to Japan and buying some stuff from Up Garage or something. But yeah, I'm like, that's when something new anyway. I don't want to buy something used from Japan, get it here, and then they're blown or something. So anyway, so yeah, did that. Upgraded to the Z32 brakes. There was the 240SX forums back then. People would post on, and some guy like, the Z32 brakes fit on. And everyone's like, no way. And that was like the hot mod to do all of a sudden, go to the junkyard, get some Z32 brakes. And they fit pretty easy. Just had to re-drill the 4-lug for your rotors. So, got some meshies that I found. Alta Wheel Shop was down in Orange, not Orange County, but down like El Monte area. And Ken Gucci used to work there, I think, for a little bit. But some mesh wheels and stuff like that, and got suspension where I wanted it, besides the busted out subframe bushings and all that. But it was halfway there. It was good enough. And then but again, getting to that stage was a challenge, and like getting the Sylvia front end, like there was zero in America. You couldn't again find them. So
yeah, what was that like? I mean, weird.
I knew I wanted it because I just did not ever like the pop-up front end on the 240, on the coupe, I would say. It just looked out of proportion. Like the front end looked too long compared to the back of the car.
If you've seen a Sylvia, you're like,
right.
You're like, oh, this is weird.
Right. You're like that. Yeah, exactly. It was weird, but I'm like, but it looks like that was the intent design of the car, right? It has a shorter front end on it, the fixed headlights, like it all flows together, like the shape of the headlights to the back of the car. I don't know. I just look at these engineering things in my head and I go, okay, this is what I need. Again, didn't know if it was going to bolt on. I had no idea.
So you just rolled the dice. You're like,
just rolled the dice, dude. JUN, where they had a shop here in USA, and I bought the front end through them. And it bolted on. I mean, I was like, wow, okay, this is easy. Just had to do some wiring on the headlights and stuff and the turn signals, and that was that. I was like, awesome. So
do you think you're like the first one with the Sylvia front end conversion in the US?
I mean, I'm not sure. There was a couple guys at that time that were doing it. It's hard to say who was first, but I would say we were all with, like, in that first year, probably we all had it. Like, it was 3 or 4 of us that had a Sylvia face. So I wanted the bricks. I didn't like the projector headlights.
Ahead of your time.
So they were so cheap back then too. I mean, brick headlights were like $100 for a pair. You know,
dude, that blows people's mind because I remember when they were the same price. I don't remember when the bricks were cheaper, but I remember when the bricks were the same price, and I was like, oh yeah, bricks for sure.
Yeah, totally. But I mean, once I got the look down, it still wasn't perfect how I wanted it, but you know, I collected the stickers from Japan when Dave and I went to Japan, and we were able to meet a lot of cool guys that were, you know, our idols, like, you know, Hiroshi Takahashi from Running Free and Team Marionette and stuff like that, like those kind of cool guys. K-Style, Team Break, Koguchi, like, you know, they all gave us their stickers. So of course, when we came back to USA, I slapped those right in the back of the window. And not long after, I got pulled over because the cop said it was impeding my view out of the back window. So I'm like, no, dude, like, please don't make me take these off. And he's like, sorry. So I had to go to the police station and I had to tear them all off. And so like all those were lost. I was like, dude, I was so bummed. But, you know, oh well. People make their reproductions these days. You know, you can buy them pretty much. A bunch of different people make them, but it's like, I like the originals, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it was handed to you.
Yeah, exactly.
There's something special about that.
Yeah, that was cool. But
what year did you and Dave go to Japan?
First time was in January 98. So yeah, we went for the Tokyo Auto Salon, and I went for an interview at JUN Auto Mechanic. Again, I don't want to repeat myself from Silmady Mania's podcast.
Yeah, but definitely listen to that one. It was like fucking amazing, and go listen to that one because there's a lot of really cool stuff on there.
Yeah, exactly. I would say just listen to that, and I'll give you the gist of why we went to Japan and all the kind of shenanigans we got into. But yeah, that was the first time. Dave moved there, like, I want to say 6 months later. He had access to an apartment that his friend was renting. And so, yeah, he just lived it up. You know, he just was going to Rocco Mountain, to the drift stuff up there. He was going to track events everywhere, all around with Hiroshi Takahashi. And so I didn't get to experience as much as Dave. I'm jealous in that regard because I had a job. So I actually had to make a living. He was living at home and just was able to do that. So, you know, kudos to him. Also was able to support himself by selling parts, like from Up Garage. You know, he would buy them dirt cheap and sell them for a premium to guys, you know, like us in America. So, yeah, but yeah, I haven't really been back since. I want to go to Japan like as soon as possible, but you know, things get in the way.
I mean, some of the earliest drift clips that I had seen, I didn't even know what option video was at the time, but like you might hate that your stuff got bootlegged and put in videos or whatever on, like, but all the stuff on Kazaa with like Slide Squad, like the watermark on there, I remember that from when I was like 12 and 13 years old.
Wow.
Like getting those like little clips that people stole from, you know, because not everybody is, I don't know, that was like the YouTube of the era. And yes, reposting shit sucks, and you know, good thing you had your watermark on there, you know. But like,
Right.
not all of us were good enough at the internet to like find your site and all your like info and stuff. So
Sure.
like the fact that it got like stolen and put other places, like I remember like one of the most memorable clips I think is that shot of, I can't even remember what kind of car it is, but I remember it's like the early Abisu or Ebis like Toad course with the Slide Squad like watermark on the clip.
Yeah.
Like that clip is like the one that I remember like the first seeing drifting when I was like,
It was like at the corner, like, and it shows it's like a silver S13 going around.
Yeah.
That was K-Style Hiroka's car.
Sick.
Yeah. That was like the day the course opened. So that was pretty cool. Before trees and all that kind of stuff was there, you know?
Yeah, it was just like I was telling Benson, he was cracking up because I was like, I didn't know that was like toge course. Like, like before there, I didn't know that there was a toge course before there were trees. And he's like, oh my God. He's just like,
newbie.
yeah, pretty much. He was fucking cracking up, laughing at me. And I'm just like, hey man, like, you know, it's hard to piece this stuff together when you but yeah, that I like remember that clip like vividly from the first time I saw it. You know, it was like drifting whatever on like Kazaa or
right.
Kazaa Light or whatever, and you like wait 4 days to get the video that was 8 seconds long.
Yeah, that was painful. And like our site would often crash, our Slide Squad site, because we would host all the pictures and videos, and we started getting flooded with traffic, especially when we had a Super Street article come out in 2001, and all of a sudden, like, you know, it's in print, right? So everyone
that's
discovers
reading magazines, like they're like,
right.
Oh, I have a computer.
Right, exactly. I mean, that was like the first real drifting article that was published in America. So all these people that were, you know, into Hondas and drag racing and import drags at that time, all of a sudden discovered something new. And it was like, oh, let's go check this out. And boom, our site was just, down day after day. Just, but it was cool to be.
Cool.
Yeah, it was unique at that point. We were just lucky to be in the right place at the right time, you know, be able to expose people to that kind of content. And and I still get people come up to me or talk to me about it. Like, dude, just, you know, I remember looking at that, seeing it for the first time, like your guys' site, like got me, inspired me into drifting. I'm still into it today. It's like, dude, like it makes me feel humble, like being a part of that era, you know? So I'm just glad I'm still into it too. Like, I mean, a lot of people have come and gone with drifting over the years. They're into it for a hot minute because it's the popular thing to do. And then eventually, like, they move on to something else. But like, yeah, I've just enjoyed like seeing it, the progression, like over the years, and especially where it is today with all the grassroots drifting, you know, because that was dead for a while. That was so dead. I mean, like, it started with grassroots, right? Like, and then
that's all there was.
Yeah, that was all there was, right? There was Club 4AG events mostly out here in California, and you know, eventually D1 started coming here to the US, and it was like, oh, this is getting popular. That's when you know when D1 wants like a part of this in America, they want a piece of the pie. It's getting big, right? And then, you know, they started selling out like at Irwindale for their events. Like, it was just max capacity of like 10,000 people coming to watch a drift event. And you're just like, this is wild. You know, after a couple of years of nothing, no one knowing anything about it to this, it was cool to be a part of that. But it kind of almost to me started to grow out of control though, you know, because like when something gets popular so quickly, it can go many different directions. So, you know, Formula D then all of a sudden popped out of nowhere. And then it took, you know, that was a whole different style of drifting. And fans of, I would say, of Formula D are a little bit different than like grassroots style drifters or drifting. You know, like they like the high speed, like, you know, 800 horsepower cars, like, you know, like balls to the wall type of driving, right? While like grassroots style guys like myself, we're more into like car style and just being able, it's more relatable when you can build a car yourself in the garage and you can go to the track and just drift with your friends. And it's like, I'm not into competitive stuff. That's I've never been like really a competitive person with drifting. I've done it before, like D1 driver search events back in the day, and you get so much pressure on yourself. Like you get in your own head, and you're like, something you can do easily like 100 times, no problem. And then you get into
Fall
the actual
apart.
event. Yeah, you just like, you're like, what am I doing? Where am I? And you like have like a brain seizure. And yeah, like I don't know how many times I did that. And at those events, I'm like, I'm not having fun, so I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah, and you've like prepared for it 5 times more than you would have a normal event, and
Exactly, yeah. So I mean, I was at one point, like there was a D1 driver search at Fontana. And you might have heard this story before, maybe from Benson, but there was this big gutter where the initiation point was. You have to drive through this gutter. Your car just goes boom, like it bottoms out on this gutter, and like it's the worst spot ever. Like it was in the parking. It was in the parking lot of Fontana, right? Yeah. So a lot of people hit that gutter. All of a sudden, their car just spins out of control. And so, D1's there, the cameras are on, all the pressure's on. You got, Keiichi up there watching you, Nomu Ken and
yeah,
Orito.
I mean, that's got to be insane.
Yeah, and I'm like to come where I was just a few years ago to where it is now. Like these are the guys I idolized and watched, and now I'm in this position.
Yeah, you're being judged by the people that you, literally have. Yeah,
it was just wild. So. I did one run, and it was pretty good, and it got me through to the next stage. And I was like, oh man, okay. Like I was getting super amped, and then they put like all this camera equipment inside my car, video option. They're like they put it all in there because back in the day, it wasn't just a GoPro. It was like they had this like suitcase like size, like electronics and a battery and like this huge camera and all these wires. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then, but that like just made my head just get so screwed up. I was like,
yeah, I'd fall apart too.
Yeah, I was like, dude, okay, don't screw up, And then like, of course, I spun out because I hit the gutter, and I was like, burnt. I was like, they never put that footage in the video, obviously, because he wants to see some idiot spinning out, right? So, but it was fun just to be there, be a part of the whole experience. I wouldn't change it for anything, but. At that point, though, I knew like, okay, this competition stuff is not where I want to be. I just want to have fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's totally okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone, I mean, there's a bunch of different drifters. Like I said, I mean, it's not just when people that don't know drifting too well and you say, yeah, I'm into drifting, they just think it's all like Formula D, like kind of drifting. Cause that's what they've seen on TV perhaps. Or they say, oh, Tokyo Drift, it's like,
or they think you go to takeovers now. That's the hard one.
Oh yeah. I've had people ask me that too. Oh, so do you do that stuff? Like you like to take what? No. That's not me, dude.
Like, have you seen my car?
Yeah, exactly.
The nuance is lost to the majority, I think, and that's kind of the hard part.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, again, there's the grassroots style guys, there's the D1 guys, there's the Formula D guys. There's the fans who just like to. I equate it to like NASCAR fans, where they just want to see crashes. Yeah.
They want to chug some beers and watch some cars drive into each other.
Yeah, pretty much like monster trucks and stuff. Like, and that's cool too, right? Like everyone's different, so. Which kind of begs the question. Like, I was thinking this the other day. Like, I saw a guy on Instagram. He was asking people like he's building a drift car, and he's saying, "Hey, like personal opinions. What color should I paint my car? Or what wheels should I get? And da 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 da." And it's like I wanted to reply with like, "Dude, just do what you want to do. Don't ask anyone," because I think there's a lot of people who are just building their cars to get like recognition or just to get more likes, so
it's a weird time.
It's weird. And like for me, it's like, I don't think you have an attachment to your car if someone else is making the decisions on it, just, there's always going to be haters, right? There's always going to be people saying like, oh, your wheels are too skinny, or they're too wide, or your body kit's ugly, or your paint is ugly, whatever, right? Who cares? Like, just rock it how you think it's cool, you know?
If you like it, someone else will like it.
Right.
It doesn't have to be everybody.
Right. But, yeah. Was that old saying goes, you can't please all people all the time, right? But some of the people some of the time. So, I mean, there was a lot of people who hated my car back in the day, my blue S13. You know, they made fun of it. Like, oh, the Smurf mobile, you know? And it's like, yeah, whatever, you know? But like now I look back pictures of it and I'm like, dude, like I miss that car. It still looks cool today, you know? Yeah. It was like when there was the trend, I'm not sure if you were into cars at this point, but like in the mid 90s, you know, with the Hondas, when they had the crazy body kits on them, you know, and they had the strobe underglow and all that kind of stuff.
My mom would take me to the bookstore hoping that I would go read some like, you know, smart guy stuff. And I would just go straight to the magazine aisle and just read all the car magazines for like 3 hours. So yeah, from like an early age, I was like, I read the European ones with like the hatchbacks with all the crazy molded stuff. I love all of it. But you're ahead of your time a little bit, I think, on the styling.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. For me, like style is important, and I don't like over the top style. So, I know that's a big thing these days of like, you know, having a super wide body car and you know, vinyl all over the whole thing, which is cool. Like don't get me wrong, right? But you know, when it's tastefully done, it's cool, right? But some guys, it's like they go on a website and they just like click add everything to cart, you know, and they build a car that way where it's just like too much of everything and there's no style in it because of it. It's just like, again, if there's a direction that's taken, like there's thought put behind it, like, okay, this is how the design of the vinyl will match the color of the car and the wheel fitment will match this, that, and the other. Then fine. But there's, as we know, there's a lot of cars out there. I'll probably get some hate on this, but there's a lot of cars that are ugly. They just, you know, again, they try to go too extreme and too much of something can be a bad thing.
Yeah. I think if you grew up, if the first thing that you saw was like option videos and like Japanese stuff, like that's kind of what you lean towards. And then there's kind of like this resurgence of like Japanese style stuff, but then on like the American style of cars, and it's like kind of like it's like missing some of the nuance, and then it goes like this like weird way. And I don't know, everybody's got their preferences, and it's like I think if you are like, oh yeah, this like super pro looking car, and then they just add like a little Japanese style to it, people are like, oh, this is like super Japanese style. It's like, well, you kind of like, yeah, I don't know. It's very difficult. Drifting is a very weird performance art.
It is.
And like I'm kind of happy because I feel like this like younger generation is like really embracing the aesthetic of like the drifting that I've fell in love with, like the look of the cars, and like, so like I feel like it's going to continue on, and I agree with you 100%. There's like, you know, if you go overboard and you just like pick all the stuff that's like, oh, this is cool right now, this is cool right now, this is cool right now, and you put it all in your car, it doesn't always work. But it's kind of hard to have like, not everybody can like build something up in their head and visualize it and then
yeah. Well, some people, once their car comes together, they realize, oh yeah, these wheels suck, like the fitment is just terrible, you know, and they change it up. They you know, keep kind of progressing the car, which is fine. Again, yeah, not everyone has that in their head where they can. When I build a car, I try to do that first in my head before anything. It's like I make a visual blueprint. Yeah, and you're like, okay, what would work with this, and how can I put it all together? Like make a theme of it, right? So And it reminds me of the guys who are, as of right now, there's a big movement of like guys buying the old rare JDM parts, like, off Yahoo Japan. They buy them off, like back shelf on a Facebook group, right?
Yeah.
And there's tons of overpriced stuff on there. Anything with the Nismo badge on it, for example, is this crazy money, right?
Yeah, like the old school Nismo logo, anything printed on that is
right.
Ridiculous.
Exactly. And so I think there's some guys that they're buying they're building their car just to try to get, as your mug just says right there, clout. So, like they're trying to add as much as they can. They're like just emptying out their bank accounts, taking out loans, just to try to buy these rare, cool parts.
Yeah.
But
Hitman steering wheel, gotta have this, like, yeah.
Right. But there's no theme because it's like you have all this random stuff kind of hodgepodge together, put on your car. And yeah, a lot of that stuff is rare and it's cool. But do they drive their car that much? Maybe they don't. Maybe it's just they take pictures of it and upload it and like say, hey, look at my cool gauge I just got or whatever, right? That's super rare. I don't know. Like, again, for me, it's just staying with the theme, keeping it simple. I don't know. That's just, I know I'm different, but that's just me.
I understand.
It's
a weird time because there's so many different avenues now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like, do you want to build a car to go to Final Bout with? Do you want to build a car to drive with your friends? Do you want to build a car to pretend like you drift? Do you want to build a car to like, have a drift car for when they need them for rap videos? Do you want to build a car to like, do you want to build a drift car that you just drive to work? Do you want to build a car to go compete competitively? Do you want to go build a car to compete not competitively, but still compete and not like try and be like, it's.
I feel like there's a song in here like, do you want to build a drift car? Sorry, Frozen reference.
No, it was good. I needed to be stopped anyway. I was just going to keep saying you could until this podcast ended. So.
Well, I mean, that also asks a question. I mean, we're talking about how 240 SXs are just, prices have obviously gone cuckoo since COVID, since the cars are getting harder to find. I mean, finding a stock condition car is tough. Usually they're all thrashed up and just overpriced, but I mean, it's getting to the point where people can't buy them anymore. And what are they going to start buying? I mean, 350Z seems like the new kind of car that people are buying because they're still relatively inexpensive. Like you can get one for out here, like for $7 to $10 grand, and throw some suspension on it and some wheels and go to the track.
They already hit the valley though. They were cheap. They were like 3 and 4K, and then like a nice one was 5, and now they're going up. And it's
are going up.
Everything has hit that like valley, has hit the floor and is going back up. Anything that is driftable or like, and it's just, there's just so many, like, it's, I don't know. I started doing events in 2011, which is a little over 10 years. And back then it was like, there was Sonoma Drift, and that was, I think it was like every other Wednesday, which was crazy. That was like a lot of events, and they were not full. Like they could not fill them. And then there would be like one every like once a month maybe at Thunderhill on the weekend. And now they have 2 skid pads at Thunderhill, and they're both rented pretty much for the year on the weekend, which is unreal. Like there's just that much more people drifting and trying to drift and doing their own drifting organizations, and it's
right.
I wonder if we're going to get to a point of like fizzle out where it's like, it's kind of like, but I kind of look at it like, okay, so skateboarding blew up really fast and then was super uncool because of like how big it got very quickly. And then the people who really cared about it continue to do it. And all the like big corporate sponsorships and all the brands kind of crumbled. And like over time, just the people who were really into it, like they stayed doing it. and then it kind of ramped up again. I feel like we're in that secondary like ramp up, but like that secondary ramp with skateboarding never really has not fallen off for, I don't know, at least 5 years. So like I really do think drifting's here to stay, and I'm
Yeah.
interested to see where it goes. Um,
Yeah,
I
it'll
just,
be interesting because, as we know, with the current climate of the world, like with gas prices, just like
yeah,
a couple of years ago when gas was $3 something, it wasn't a big deal. But now that it's like $6, I mean, you got to factor that in. If you're going for a weekend, that doubles your fuel cost. You're going to be spending maybe a couple $100 if you're going to drive to the track and drift all day and drive home. That's a cost of like some tires. So, and will it keep going up? Will it get to $10 a gallon a year from now, and to the point where drifters are like, dude, this ain't sustainable anymore. I can't do this.
yeah,
So, because I mean, let's face it, a lot of the younger people are into drifting. Like I would say, 20s into 30s, right?
yeah,
And a lot of guys don't have the kind of money to throw around. Like they're living on a budget. So I mean, I know I was when I was that age.
yeah, and especially
And
with the rate of the car builds going up,
yeah,
like they got cheap and then they're starting to get expensive again. It's like, oh, you need this to go and you need that to go drive.
right. Yeah, it's not even the price of just the car, right? Like I know we talked about this in other podcasts, but like the price of an engine, like if you want a 1JZ, when they were like, you got $1,200 for a 1JZ motor set. And, now we get to the stage where it's $4 or $5 for a motor set. And you're just like, dude,
It hurts me. It hurts me to my core because I got my Jay-Z for $1,200 and now they're $5,000 for for an auto
yeah,
Jay-Z X110 setup, like
right. Yeah,
which
it's
is like
crazy.
the non-desirable one.
Do you have a spare engine like that you bought just in case?
I almost did, and then I was like, I'll get one later.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you never know. Like, if people get out of drifting, because it's a supply and demand thing. So
Yeah,
if people get into something else, and all of a sudden there's a plethora of motors around, well, the price will go down, like anything that people don't want. So I don't know. Like I said, if gas goes to $10 a gallon, it could be a thing. So I don't know.
we just gotta wait for it to like not be cool to have drift cars in your rap videos, and then we'll be on like decline, and then people will be like, oh, that's not cool anymore. Like
Right.
they want
It'll be something else that's cool, like RC cars in their videos.
Yeah.
No, that will never happen. Never, never. But yeah, I mean, even thinking of the future, I mean, will tracks survive? Because if people stop going to the tracks, I mean, to operate a track is so expensive, and the amount of land they have, and just the upkeep and the employees and everything.
Yeah, and as property value goes up, what's that land worth? Is it worth renting the track out, or is it worth selling it so that they can build condos or whatever? And you're just like,
yeah. I mean, yeah, if let's say like a track day is $10,000 to rent out the track, and so they make $40,000 in a month. The track, well, if they sell their property for, I don't know, $10 million, they might do that, right?
They're gonna sell the track.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know.
That's what keeps happening. I mean, it is happening in certain places where like, but then like another track will pop up and be like, okay, we can drive here now. So it's like it's very, I don't know. The future is definitely unclear at this time.
Yeah, that's true. And same with like, will we still be driving gasoline cars? Like, I know that's come up before too, but I mean, I don't know. Like, is it going to be electric drift cars? And how different will that be? Will that be a cool thing? I don't know. I mean, hopefully it is, right? But
yeah, well, being an RC guy, you got a leg up.
Yeah, I'll just charge up some batteries and I'll head right out there. But no, like, I mean, cars that are like, I talked to you about this before offline, but like cars that are cheaper to buy right now, a cool build, right? Like something different. That's what I appreciate about you, is that you have an E36 drift car, which is not the normal choice. People don't usually like when they get in the drifting, say, hey, oh yeah, I want to get an E36, right? And maybe they do now because they're inspired by you.
It's like the car now. Not
Is
because
it?
of me.
Okay. I'm out of touch then. I'm out of touch. But
if you go to like a typical Grassroots day, there's 3x E36s to S chassis at this point.
Wow. I'm definitely out of touch. I mean, I've seen them at Final Bout here and there. Some nice builds. And but you and I talked about before, like I think a cool build would be an old Mercedes 190E. Like how cool would that be? Because not many people know this, but it was one of the best DTM cars. So DTM was the German touring car series back in the 80s and early 90s. I would watch that as a kid, and these cars are like so rad. They were like on the ground so low with like huge 20-inch wheels, with like they just look amazing, right? And those are going some so of the fast.
Coolest looking race cars of all time.
Yeah, legit. And they just sound amazing. I mean, they were revving to like, 9,000 RPM out of the Mercedes at that point, like making 350 horsepower NA. And I was like, man, I want one of those, They sold the Cosworth 190 over here in America, which wasn't the same. It was detuned and all that.
The Evo 2 like look is just I feel like a lot of Japanese aero manufacturers took cues from that car when they made aero for other cars.
Oh, 100%. With how aggressive like the bumpers were, the huge rear wing and stuff. Like, yeah, that thing looked rad. And now those things are worth crazy money. Like I've seen them pop up on Bring a Trailer and stuff, and
$300K.
Go from yeah.
Like no, my dream car is inaccessible at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you can still buy just like a stock 190E 5-speed, right? And like Dai Yoshihara, he had an idea that I had, which was to put a Honda motor in it, right?
I'm so upset because I was taught when that got unveiled, I was like punching the sky because I was like, fuck, that was I still want to do it. I want to do NAK series.
Mm-hmm.
I want to put a DCT behind it, like one of those the BMW like dual clutch transmissions.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm gonna do it. I just need to figure out how and when, but like it's in the works. I like
nice. Yeah, you got to do that, dude.
I saw that
I'm
car
a full supporter.
Fully upset. It's like, Dai beat me to it.
Yeah, I saw his build on it, and I was like, man, I've always wanted to do that, just like you. I'm just like, but once I saw the finished product, and it came out really nice. I mean, he's using an S2000 drivetrain in it.
Yeah.
And looks like it runs pretty well. But yeah, K series is what I would do as well. K20 or K24 NA.
Yep.
It's revving to the stratosphere. They just sound so cool. And if you blow it up, whatever, you just go get another one. They're still plentiful at the moment, anyway, right? Like at the importers, yeah. So, because I mean, I wouldn't want to have the stock motor in that thing. I mean, it's like an inline 6, like 115 horsepower or something.
My first car was a 190E, and I had the 2.3 liter non 16 valve. Like I didn't have the Kazi motor. I had the 2.3 liter. Like it was gutless. It was like, and I say that where I wasn't like a horsepower guy. I didn't want like a fast, high horsepower car when I was younger. I didn't care, but that thing was, and mine was automatic. It was rough.
Yeah,
but I've kind of always
wanted
sure it
was
to replace
fun,
it.
though.
Oh yeah, I loved it. It was cool having a rear wheel drive car. Like I didn't know what an LSD was, and I would always like try and do donuts in it. I'm like, how come it doesn't like? Because my mom had a LS400 with a factory LSD, and I had no idea what an LSD was, and I was like, how come when I do donuts in this car, it like does them good, and this car,
right?
Just dumb kid stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, those cars were built like tanks too. I mean, I still see them around today, like going around town, like some old lady driving it, and it looks like brand new still, like no rust, and just like they're built to last. but you still get them pretty cheap. Like seems like $3,000 like for a clean one.
Yeah.
So
I've
I don't know.
had my eyes open. I just haven't found like the one yet.
Mm,
So if anybody has a 190 they want to sell me, let me know.
hell yeah. Yeah, you gotta do that. And then K series, like I said. But would you make it like Japanese style or like German DTM style?
I kind of want to. So like, I don't know if I want to give too much away, but I do. I do have. I have Equipo 5s that I had on my
Mm,
S13, and I bought them back from my friend who I sold them to when I parted out the S13. And I'd really like to put it on those because
nice.
they're not chrome face. They're like gray face with like the red center cap. So kind of, I feel like it would work. I don't know. I have it in my head. It works, but I have to like do it.
Yeah.
But I'd want it like kind of DTM'd out, but then like a little Japanese flavor on it.
Nice. Yeah, I think that would be good. I think that's the same way I would do it too. Just like a little Japanese flavor to it, you know? Like even maybe like some TE37s or something.
Oh yeah, that'd be
I think
so good.
would look dope.
That'd be so
Yeah.
good.
See, now all these people are gonna like start looking up in Craigslist 190Es after we're talking about this.
I know. And now I'm gonna have to buy one before I put this out.
Yeah.
It's time. I've been talking about it for way too long. I have a plan. I have a plan though. I'll tell you about it off this because I can't give away all the secrets, all the secret sauce.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
Because like honestly, like people are starting to talk about those cars. Like I'm seeing it in
Really?
yeah. So I'm like, it's like if you want to buy one, now's the time because there's not a lot of them out there at the moment, especially like around here. I've been looking for the last like year or so, and like all the ones that are for sale have been for sale, and there's not really too many new ones popping up.
Yeah,
but they sold a lot of them. So like that's kind of like confusing part. Like I just don't know. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong place, or people aren't selling them.
Yeah. Are you looking on like Marketplace or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I sometimes go on the really weird stuff to look for cars because usually it's old people selling those cars, and they use like
Auto Trader.
Yeah, Auto Trader. Craigslist they still use, right? So a lot of older people don't really use Facebook that much. You know, they're confused by it or whatever, right? So
yeah.
Yeah, or just word of mouth. I mean, I heard like a year ago there was some old guy around here selling one, but I didn't pull the trigger on it, but it sold pretty quickly. But yeah,
they're cool. I bought it as my first car because I watched a lot of touring cars growing up, and I thought that was like the coolest car. Also, my like granddad was like a Mercedes guy. He had like a W124 like 300E. Yeah,
those are cool.
So like it was like the body style. It was like one of the first cars I ever drove because he let me like drive his around and stuff. So I was like,
oh yeah.
So like it's in time.
Yeah, it's a nostalgia thing, right? So like when you link something to your childhood, it's forever going to be a cool car to you. Like I feel that way about the Starion because my dad had a couple Starions when I was a kid. He bought one brand new, like in '88, and brought it home from the dealer. It was black and it was so shiny. I was like, whoa! Like it just blew my mind.
They look wild. Like I'm sure in the '80s, I was like a very like good looking car.
Yeah, there was nothing else that looked like it back then, with like the wide fenders and the wide wheels from factory and stuff, and just so aggressive looking, and it had turbo written over everything in the interior, like the seat belts all the way down, say like turbo, 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 like all the way down. Just things like that was just like, man, this seems like a spaceship, Eventually when I bought one like in '94, it was my second car. So I love them so much, but I mean, they were ahead of their time in some ways, but like they were behind the times, like mechanically.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a 2.6 inline 4. 8 valve, single overhead cam.
Oh yeah.
Turbo making like 175 horsepower. Like it was just pathetic. 7-to-1 compression, no joke. 7-to-1 compression from the factory.
Well, we gotta have somewhere for the boost to go.
I mean, some people would run you could run crazy boost in those because they had such low compression. I mean, 7-to-1, you could run like 30 pounds of boost, like no problem. Obviously with supporting fuel mods, but
yeah.
Fuel technology, like the ECUs and stuff back then was so primitive compared to today. Like no one knew how to work on them. They were throttle body injection as well. Like they had a map sensor and a mass airflow sensor on them. It was just a mess. It was a mess. And the engine was derived from the truck, from the Mighty Max.
Oh, yeah.
It was called the G54B engine. So it was this heavy iron. It was iron head, I think, too. It was this, yeah. I wish they put the 4G63 in it. That would have been perfect. Some people do that swap.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah. On YouTube, like people have done the 4G63 swap, and then you got like 300 horsepower, reliable horsepower. In a cool car. So
that's actually pretty sick.
Yeah.
I always like the body style, but I feel everyone that has one's like. There was an NA version too, right? Or is there? Do they only come turbo?
They were all came turbo, except there was an intercooled version and a non-intercooled version. So the non-intercooled made like 140 horsepower. And it didn't have the wide fenders. It had skinny fenders and skinny wheels on it. A lot of little changes like that. So it was like you got to have the intercooled,
Yeah.
I
love that like an intercooler is the difference between like a brand tier in cars back then. Like
yeah.
Like they don't
Yeah, that was definitely different times. I talked about this on my Instagram, but like a lot of cars had like the offset hood scoops back then too in the 80s, which I thought was super cool. Yeah. Like the FC, right? The Turbo 2 has an offset hood scoop. The Z31 had a hood scoop, like 280ZX turbo, Porsche 944 turbo, like you name it. They all had a kind of weird offset hood scoop, It
has a turbo, it has offset hood scoop.
Yeah.
So what led you to do the FC build? Or did you find a good one that you were like, this is sweet to build, or you just hadn't done one yet? Or
it was always on the bucket list.
Nice.
So back in like, I don't know, late 90s, when I saw the Sexy Nights FC in Battle Magazine, I was like, oh man, that looks so good. Like it was just slammed on R33 GTR wheels, like just looks so clean. I'm like, I gotta have one, and I almost bought one like in 99. I test drove. It was a 91 black FC Turbo 2. And it was just roached out though. Like it had 100 door dings in it. The engine had been rebuilt supposedly, but when I stopped at a gas station, it was just puking oil out the bottom. Like seriously, it was like someone had just opened a faucet. It was just oil. I'm like, dude, what is going on? I'm like, no, I don't want this thing. I didn't know anything about rotaries either. I mean, rotaries is, if you think you know about cars, if you have a piston engine, just wait till you get a rotary. It's like learning so many new things. It's like alien technology. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I can see why people get so passionate about rotaries, because it is such a unique technology. So when I found mine, I found it a year ago. It was on some obscure site for sale. Again, I always search the lesser known places for cars, and it was up in Fresno, so up by you. And it was bone stock. I had been sitting, and so I bought it, trailered it down, and it had been sitting for 20 years. And I first thought it was only sitting for 10 because the registration said 2010, I think, on it. But come to find out, it actually had been sitting for 20. It's just the guy kept like renewing the tags on it for some reason.
Wow.
So yeah, but it was bone stock. I mean, everything was factory stock on it, which is what I like. The paint was all faded. It's single stage paint from the factory. So I'm like, okay, I know it can polish out. And it's red. So yeah, I was hoping it wouldn't be as involved as it was, right? So like I pulled the intercooler off and I'm like, oh, the throttle position sensor is unplugged. So maybe that's all that's stopping it from starting up. So I plugged it in. Nah, still wouldn't start, and um, did some other tests and stuff, did a compression check and found out that the rear rotor was no good. So I'm like, all right, well, looks like I'll be rebuilding this engine. So yanked it out, spent months like tearing it down and rebuilding it like brand new, got brand new rotor housings for it from Mazda, like all these hard to find parts that, like people usually reuse the rotor housings. But for me, it's like, well, if I'm going to do this again, I'm going to do it right. I'm not just going to slap it back together and hope to get 10,000 miles out of the engine and have to rebuild it again.
Well, especially something like that where it's like completely original. Like
yeah.
The value of the cars are going crazy. Like FDs are crazy money.
Yeah, FDs. I mean, that's on my bucket list, but at this point, not obtainable. Unless I like sold the GTR and got an FD, which I don't want to do. But with the FC,
please keep the GTR.
Yeah, that's definitely staying home here. But yeah, with the FC, it's like it was such a learning curve and building the motor piece by piece, and so it's running, but it's still got some bugs in it. Like it won't boost. So I'm replacing all the fuel lines now. I mean, you can't find parts much anymore for these cars, right? It's getting harder and harder to find parts. So I'm going to have to make my own custom metal fuel lines to go under the car all the way from the gas tank to the front. And just things like that. Like you push the boundaries of your automotive capabilities. It's like it took everything I knew and kind of spun it on its head. And I don't know, sometimes I think I might be a masochist or something, because I'm like, why do I put myself through this? Like I'm just always working on this car, but I mean, going through everything bit by bit, like I've been restoring it more or less. Restored the paint, like polish it all out, redoing all suspension, as I mentioned before, rebuilt the motor. It's like brand new. Interior looks pretty nice at this stage. Got Recaro SR3s in it. Got a Nardi 330 millimeter classic on it, and there's some other stuff to kind of, make it OEM plus. So Watanabe's on it, 17x9 Watanabe. Got some stance coilovers. I don't want to go too excessive on it. Just kind of make it like a nice driver where I can drive it to the track. I can do a drift event. I can do a track day, like road race event. I can do canyons. I can drive to work, so that's the goal with the car. And, so far we're on track. I didn't think it would take so long. I mean, again, it's been a year since I got it, but it's come a long way.
That's not that bad for the amount of work you're doing to it. I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's been hundreds of hours, but again, like just learning so much, which has been fun and frustrating, but at the same time, it's like, okay, now I know how to do that. I can do it 10 times faster than I could before. It's like that with any car you get, right? I'm sure you went through the same thing with your M3 when you got it. It's like, well, how does this work? How come this isn't coming apart? And then you do it and you're like, oh yeah, that's easy.
Yeah, my friend just got one. He just got an E36 M3, and I was like, oh yeah, you're missing this, and oh yeah, this is weird. And he's like, because he's a master tech, and he's like, oh, wow, all right, you like actually learned a lot about this car having it. I'm like, yep, I only know about this car and S chassis, and that's pretty much it.
Nice.
So
what made you want to get the M3?
It's kind of corny, but I made a spreadsheet. I'm not the best mechanic. I definitely wasn't at the time. I had my S13. I had it for 5 years. I learned how to drift in it. I learned how to work on cars in it. And I made some bad calls when I had some downtime and work was busy, and I decided to do a new turbo setup, and I didn't get the wastegate dialed in correctly. And I had like the engine came with like a Mines ROM tune ECU tune 4 ? It drove really good with a T28 on it. So I was like, oh, we'll get like a similar size turbo. And now that I have the manifold, it'll be fine,
Right.
First day out, rod knocked it because I wasn't keeping an eye on boost, and first and second gear I didn't really get that high, but third it was like a full track day at Thunder Hill, and then so I'm, flat out in third gear with the 408 final drive, and I'm like, this thing rips. I did like one or two laps. I didn't blast a straight. I was doing a lot of on and off throttle. I wasn't like laying into the pedal a lot. I go down the front straight and I'm wadded like just, and I'm like, this is sick. This turbo is sick. I look down and I'm at like 22 psi and like sustained at probably 22 psi, and I rod knocked the motor. And that same month, my shop space, I like rented like $200 a month spot like in my friend's shop, just like off to the side. He was getting out of the lease, and it was like next to my job. I lived like 45 minutes away from it. No, I had nowhere to put the car. Like I could have put the car like 2 hours away from me for who knows how long. And I just said, it's time. I'm going to part this thing out. And I made a spreadsheet of like, what cars can I buy that I don't need to motor swap to be able to drift? And that was one of them. And it scored highly in enough cells. Like was like the top one. And it was like between that and I was looking at IS300s. I was looking at like a BRZ. I was like, oh, I'll get like a new car and then I'll just, do something else or whatever. And I was like, maybe I just won't drift it as much because it'll be my daily. And then there's like a kind of like an OG dude from around here. He's like, get the E36. And I was like, yeah, because he's like an old, what's his name? His name's Todd Ho. He's like a dude who's been around for a while. And he bought an E36 M3 and he'd been like drifting it at Sonoma and stuff. Just like nobody knows who I am. I'm just gonna come and like go drive by myself. And then I was like, oh well, doors. I can get doors easily if it does turn into an animal style car. Like I can get doors for it.
They're the same from the regular 3 Series, right?
Yeah. So I was like, oh, there's lots of parts at junkyards. Nice. I really like these like fenders they make for the car. And in my head, I was like, no one's really done one in the style that I want to build it in. That I like I hadn't seen one ever. And there was like one or two guys who had done it, but it wasn't exactly the way that I would have done it, if that makes sense. And so I was like, I think I can do something really unique here. And I didn't have like the most support from everyone because I don't think that they had the same picture in their head that I did. But like once it started to come together, I think people were really like, oh, okay, this is pretty sick. And that felt really fucking good. I'm not going to lie. But, there's still like a little bit of weirdness to it. Like, we go to Japan and we're hanging out at N Style and it's just like a wall of S chassis all parked outside. Yeah. And I'm like, I do feel like a little bit of like an outsider. Especially like because that's the type of driving we want to emulate and the people that we look up to and stuff. And they're like, oh, that's the weird BMW guy, And I would say that's really the only downside. I think the cars makes a ton of mechanical grip. It's fast. It's front rack. So like doesn't over center. These are things that I didn't realize when I chose it. I'd say like the only real downside is like the gas tank sucks and it was like a bunch of work to get it so it doesn't fuel slosh. And yeah, I mean, other than that, like in my head from the beginning, I was like, I'm going to put a JZ in it because Julian had that JZ in his car and just beat on it mercilessly. And Julian broke like every car ever. And I was like, if Julian can't break this motor, like that's the motor for me. I don't want to deal with engine stuff because like inside motor stuff is scary to me. It's kind of embarrassing, but
Well, yeah, you're the type of guy who likes to drive, right? You want to get on the track. You don't want to waste time wrenching on the car, being underneath of it, trying to fix something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah. And I mean, I I did copy some people, like they're like one of my friends, Julian DeMay, had one, and I rode with him, and I was like, oh, this is actually like a really well set up car. Cause I had driven one because they had one at like this drift school, and it was like, oh, don't drive that piece of shit. And I drove it, and I was like, this thing's actually kind of great. Like,
Mm.
uh, so I would like, it's one of those things. Like, if you could have like, if I had a ranch and I could have all the cars that I wanted, there'd be a lot of Japanese cars on that property. But right now, I only have room for a couple, and right now it's E36s because that's what works for me. I don't know.
Well, what would be your first Japanese choice?
I would do unforgivable things for an S15.
Mm.
But I don't know, like I really like R33s, and I know that's like a hot. It's not a hot take, but it's a love it or hate it car. But when I went to
Sure,
Japan
yeah.
for the first time, I saw one in this is 2016, a little different, but like I saw one just done up driving down the street, silver, like all like carbon accents, uh, like black tees, just like outstanding car, like
Yeah.
beautiful. And I was like, that's something that I would love to own.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Actually, I like the people are going to say I'm crazy, but I like the R33 more than the R34.
Okay.
Um, because I mean, when I got into all this stuff in the mid '90s, that's like what I saw. I remember the R33 GTR just came out in '95 when I
Mm,
first started getting into the stuff, and it was like, whoa, that thing looks so amazing. And going to Japan in '98 and seeing at the Tokyo Auto Salon all these demo cars, R33 demo cars that were just so cool, like the top secret R33. It was all gold.
dude, it's
Um,
such a wild car.
yeah, the Greddy S Rock, which is now here in the U.S. It's like a metallic blue. They just recently took it to Ars Day, the annual Skyline Day that they have at the track. And so yeah, some guy bought it, brought it over here. They've been restoring it at Greddy, and they got it running in time for Ars Day. So I was bummed I couldn't be there to see it drive, but I mean, just seeing that car just has every single Greddy part on it that you could imagine back in the mid '90s, and with like 800 horsepower, and it was just like, oh man. And then the R34 came out, and I was like, yeah, it's cool, but I don't know. I didn't like the non-matching taillights, how they're smaller and then bigger on the
Mm,
other, like they're non-concentric, right? So I was like, I don't know.
that's some
Um,
serious OCD shit. I love it.
yeah. Exactly. And then I looked at the headlights, and I'm like, they kind of look like a Maxima. People are really going to hate me for that, but
Ooh,
no, I mean, R34 is still amazing. I mean, I love them, but if I had the choice, yeah, I mean, if money, I mean, because now an R34 GTR is crazy money, right? So
yeah.
I'd be stupid to say no. I'd rather have an R33. But just I'm talking about style wise. I think yeah, the R33 is where it's at.
What yeah, what would you add to the arsenal?
Man, definitely an FD. Um, I mean, those cars are always just going to be cool because
They're
when they came
incredible.
out, yeah, I mean, they came out in '92, and I remember seeing one for the first time. It was yellow. My friend, his neighbor picked one up, and it was the R1 spec. And I was like, whoa, like it just looked like it was from 20 years ahead of the future,
Yeah.
Um, and I just fell in love with the car. And yeah, I mean, a car like that, there's just no wonder it's gone up in value so much because sooner or later it had to, right? Because they didn't make many of them over here or bring many over. And a lot of people have crashed them or ruined them, right, with drifting or just blowing them up and then just parting them out. find a stock one these days, yeah, good luck. If you do, it's 50 grand, 60 grand. But anyway, yeah, that would be definitely on the list. Just probably like a Safiro. I've always liked the Safiro or the Laurel, A31 Safiro or the C33 Laurel.
It's funny if you go to like Australia or New Zealand, they're just like, those are like I don't even know what to compare them to. They're like, oh, those are just those cars. Like they just like import them because they were like cheap and
like they're like a taxi, like just whatever car. Yeah.
And you're like, no, we can't have those. Like I want one.
Yeah. Well, I remember like back in the day, late 90s, like Dave really wanted one, right? Dave Slat Squad. And it turns out that in South America, Nissan had sold them in South America. Like, I don't know where it was, like in Colombia, something like that. But they were all diesel, I think, like some weird diesel engine in it, right?
No way.
And Dave's like, man, I wonder if I can somehow import one through up here into America and just swap in, an RB20 DET or RB25. And, but yeah, it would have been way too much like jumping through hoops to make that work. I mean, smuggling a car from South America, might as well be bringing in cocaine, I guess. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know. The dream was always there. And here's the thing. It was left-hand drive as well. So that was the wacky part.
Interesting.
Yeah, they didn't import many over there, but it was if we brought one in here, it'd be like, well, no cops would even ask you about it because it's left-hand drive. It looks like some ordinary car, like a Stanza or something. They wouldn't care.
Yeah.
So it fly under the radar. But once the 25-year-old rule came around for importation, you started seeing the Safiros pop up, and they were still pretty cheap, like $7,000-8,000 for a Safiro. But now, same thing. They're 15, 20, 25 grand, like for super clean one.
It's crazy.
Like I think the days are gone of being able to like yeah, I'll just get one of those.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, unless you want to pay that much money, and which I'm not prepared to spend that much money on like a 30-plus-year-old like throwaway car in Japan. So
yeah, like if you go to the track, those are the cars that are getting like ran into the wall and like bounced in between two cars. And they're like demo derby cars.
Right. Well, I remember Dave saying like when he was in Japan back in the day, people would take good condition cars like a Safiro and just drive them to the junkyard and leave them there. They were like perfect condition, but no one wanted to buy them because they do the not the Shinkansen, the Shaken, the inspection.
Yeah.
And it would cost so much money to do the Shaken on it and to register it, because the older the car is in Japan, the more expensive it is to register it. So it wasn't worth it. Like it outweighed the value of the car. So people would just take these perfect condition cars, whether it be a Silvia or a Safiro or an Integra Type R, and just take them to the junkyard and just get like $1,000 for it, So that's why we got so many front cuts over here, like back in the day, because they would just chop these cars in half because they could make more money off of that, right? Instead of they weren't allowed to import the whole car over here to America until 25 years later. So yeah, just
fill a container. Engine importer or engine importers would break it down, sell. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I remember seeing like on some sites back in the day, there was it was before they cut the car in half. They would show like a perfect condition Integra Type R, and it'd be like, oh, this car is about to get cut up. If anyone's interested, on the front clip, it's like $2,500. And I was like, dude, don't cut it up. What are you doing?
Please,
so many cars got sacrificed for us. So yeah, it's too bad.
Yeah, that must be why the motors are going. Well, I mean, they're not making them anymore. I wonder, this is like something that I really hope that Japan does, but I don't know if they will. If you look at like GM, you can buy a Crate LS or a Crate 350 tomorrow from Summit Racing. Like,
yeah,
like if they just were like, hey, these are the motors that people want to buy, just reproduce just that and put them on a pallet and send them to people's houses. Like, I think if we get into the electric car stuff and there are no more motors that we want to just put into things, then I think that might be something that happens, but who knows?
Yeah, that would be amazing. If also you could buy a crate, Type R motor or a 1JZ brand new, for cheap, and I mean, actually, Mazda still sells FD brand new motors you can buy, and they're like $6,000, I think. But apparently, they use used parts in some of them, so they
Really?
tear down parts, they analyze them, and make sure they're okay. Build the motors around that, because I guess they stopped making the engine parts for a while, like the rotors and the housings and the irons, as they call them. So they just started making not long ago though the plates again, the irons, the housings for them and the rotors. So I think they're selling now again brand new everything, short blocks. But I mean that's the way to go. If you're gonna have an FD, I would just first thing probably just buy a brand new Mazda short block. Just throw it in there.
Yeah,
you're good. But hopefully you're good. But I mean there were so many rotary shops over there too that have gone out of business just because that's a dying breed. And they're gas hogs too. I mean, it's like I picked a great time to build an FC. With the gas prices, I'm gonna be getting 12 miles a gallon, so not too smart. But whatever.
But the noise and the revs.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Based on this conversation, I feel like you're a bit of a high RPM nerd. Like every motor that you've talked about liking is a high RPM motor.
Yeah, the noise, is what is addictive. You know what I mean? Just like a 1JZ. I mean, it's one of the coolest sounding inline six motors, and that's another reason why I wanted an RB25 because they just sound cool. Straight sixes sound better.
Turbo straight six sounds so cool.
Right? Yeah, it's hard to replicate that noise.
It's embarrassing, but I'd chalk it up to my mom had a turbo Volvo six cylinder straight six turbo Volvo, and I would like sit and like rev it at like 13 years old, and she would just be like, "Can you not?" Like,
did you straight pipe it or
loud? Yeah. Loud, using gas. My mom's very frugal. It was not. She's in bad, environment stuff. It was like three things that she hated all, and I was just like, the noise, like.
Well, I think if you buy a Volvo, you have to fit in that category, right? Par for the course.
Yeah, or you like swap some crazy engine in it because you're like, I want to be the different guy with the Volvo.
Yeah.
It's one or the other.
Yeah, some should do a rotary swap in a Volvo. That'd be kind of different.
Yeah. If you really, really want to be alienated by everyone in the car scene, except for like a very small overlap. The Venn diagram of rotary / Volvo fans, I don't think is very big. But that's what makes it cool.
Exactly. And that's why I said before, like, just build your car how you want it. Like you're always going to piss people off with however you build your car. So,
yeah,
end of the day, just do what you want.
I've had people in the same day tell me that I have the coolest E36 in the world, and people tell me I shouldn't have sold my S chassis. Like,
oh really?
It's like, depending on who you're talking to or who's looking at it is going to have a completely different perspective. I like that. Like, build it for yourself. Even if my opinion is I don't like it, like, who gives a fuck what I think?
Yeah, like, exactly. If it puts a smile on your face when you drive it, that's what counts. So, I mean, I'm sure the purists, they are the ones who don't like what you did. Like, I can't believe you put a Japanese engine in your BMW M3. It's like, yeah, I did. So what? Like, I enjoy it. It's more reliable. It makes power.
When I was picking my license plate, I got like a custom plate, and I got Ruined 3. But one of the other ones that I was thinking about was I can't remember the letters that I was going to pick, but it was like Purist Cringe. I kind of regret not getting that one because that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I I don't know. Yeah, like I had one of my I have friends who were just like, "What are you doing? You painted your fucking BMW a Honda color?" And I was like, "Yeah,
What color is it? Is like the Prelude red or something?
it's the NSX red."
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay.
It was. Now it's like half that and half like Rust-Oleum Sunrise red.
It's
And
still
then
red though, right?
and
So.
then one of my bumpers is now taxi cab red because my shop neighbor was like, "I'll paint it for you," and I was like, "No, it's okay, don't worry about it." He's like, "Oh, I got you," and he like walked off with my bumper and came back. And I was like, "It's close,"
Uh,
but I mean, whatever. Like you can't really
yeah.
tell. I don't.
You'll probably end up having to paint it again anyway, right? So.
Yeah, it's in desperate need of some attention.
Well, that's the worst part. Like, as soon as you get your car nice, as I was saying before about my RB25 S13, like, was spotless, and I took it to the track the first time, and it was just like, okay, the bumpers are all scraped up, like, the doors already got a big scrape in it, and like, whatever, just roll with it.
Yeah, what was it like? What was it like tuning cars back then? Like, were you doing any kind of? I mean, I know they didn't have like standalones were like not a thing.
Yeah, what I used on the RB25 was Power FC. That was pretty much the only thing that was available back then.
Yeah, how
Um,
ahead? That was like super ahead of its time.
oh, for sure, yeah. It was like alien technology when you have your handheld controller, like Velcro to the dash, and people are like, "Oh, dude, you got a Power FC?" Like that was, points +5 right there. But um, yeah, there was not many people experienced of how to tune it. So tuning it, I just kind of did myself. It was I didn't know what I was doing. I'll admit that. I kind of just played with it, and it feels better in this RPM range now.
That's
Like
so awesome.
and hey, it worked. And I ran it for a couple of years, and just I just thrashed that motor, and it was all stock except for I was working at Turbonetics at the time, so I built a turbo for it. It was a TO4E50 trim. It bolted on the stock manifold, some 555cc Nismo injectors, and like an adjustable FDR and like exhaust and external wastegate. And it was probably making like, I would guess like 350, 375 horsepower or something around there. But yeah, it just felt really good. It was really responsive. And I remember Sloaney. I don't know if you know who Sloaney is. He's one of the old school Club 4AG guys. And he was like Moto's right hand man from Club 4AG. And he had an 86. And I let him drive it at Fontana. And he was like, dude, this is the best drift car I've ever driven. And like, it feels like a video game. It's so easy to drive. It just drifts so well. And to this day, he still says that. Like he said, he drove like Daigo Saito's car like a few years ago, and said like, no, your car still feels better. I'm like, really? So I mean, I take this as a compliment, obviously, but it's just funny. Like that car was easy to drive. It kind of made me feel or look better than I really was. I think because it was.
It's a really nice compliment, but it also kind of hurts a little bit because you're like, oh, this is the easiest car to drive ever. Like
Yeah. You could probably just put the mailman in there, and just you'll probably just start drifting it. So, but
all my teammates say that my car is like one of the best driving cars they've driven.
Nice.
And it feels good. It's like, oh wow, like maybe I got a little bit of that Nicky Lauda, like I know how to get the car dialed thing. But then on the other hand, it's like, oh, maybe like a little bit of my skill comes from like the car, and it's like
Yeah.
question that a little bit, but it does feel
Right.
good. It's like everybody wants, we're all working on these cars to make them better. It's nice to know that like you actually the things that you're doing are like other people recognize them when they drive the car.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't think I've ridden in your car before. I've rode in Aaron's car.
Yeah.
And I was following you, and your car just looked so planted, and it looked so like composed, and just yeah, like it was doing everything you wanted to do. Like you were just connected to it. I'm like, damn, that looks like so much fun.
Yeah, you should drive it.
Yeah, I would love that. And Aaron's car felt the same way too. Like that's another guy who just he spent so much. You can tell he put so much time and effort into his car.
Yeah.
Of just dialing it in and just like perfecting it. I mean, look at the paint job. You know, like the roof of it. If you have any question of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's I think I feel the drift the animal style guys are all like about that. Like you guys all like are cohesive of making your cars like just the best where you can make them to I mean it shows in your driving like when you're on the track together.
I think we all might be a little bit of a masochist, maybe a little neurotic, maybe all kinds of stuff. But
yeah,
we definitely all found each other. We're like, oh, you're that kind of crazy.
Right, you're just like me.
Let's do this.
Right.
Yeah, Aaron and I at that final bout, like, his car is like immaculate, and we're like doing burnouts, like when they did the like try like the little like photo lap or whatever. We're like doing burnouts, like trying to push each other's cars with our rear wheels and stuff. Like, and it's like, I'm like, his car is candy paint. What am I doing? And he's like cracking up. And I'm like, hey, dude, sorry. And he's like, oh, this. And he's just like rubbing the rubber off his paint. I'm like, that's
hilarious.
Not everyone's gonna feel that way or be that way. And I'm happy. Like, I feel like you find your people in this. Like, I'm really, it's, the more time you spend in something, the more you find your people that you like to do the crazy shit that there's totally. so many subcultures in this.
Yeah, exactly. Just like I was saying before, there's so many different levels of just fans and drivers, which makes the drifting universe so unique. And I mean, I'll put it this way. To be a drifter, you got to be off a little bit, I think, to start with. You're not into the usual stuff, right? You're not like a dude who just, I don't know, likes to shoot hoops with your buddies on the weekend. Maybe you do, but
yeah,
we're probably more into drifting before, shooting a hoop with your pals. But
yeah, I'm sure there are people who drift that do fantasy football, but I would say that there's probably not like a lot of people that are like, I'm a fantasy football guy. Watch the game with my boys, crack a couple beers, like barbecue, some brisket, like, I don't know. I just, it's like, oh, I want to like literally ruin my life just to do this adrenaline thing, like as much as I possibly can.
Yeah. And I think you said it right there. The word adrenaline, once you feel that rush, like it is like a drug where it's like you get hooked on it and you want to keep experiencing that adrenaline. And that's what happened for me. Like once I did my first drift, like, way back, it was like, dude, like you're shaking. Like the first time you do, like I got the car shaking and you're just like, it's all you can think about. Like, when can we do this again? Like, what have I got to do? Like, I need tires. I need this, that, and the other. But since there was no tracks back then, we were just going around to some random parking lots. Like,
what was the first place where you feel like you actually did a drift? Like, was it like paint the picture of the night?
Oh man. I mean, we used to go to construction sites a lot because late at night there's no one around. There's just houses half constructed in a neighborhood in the middle of nowhere, and so there'd be some intersections, some corners where you could drift, and so we just
like a new like housing community build or something.
Yeah. And so we would do that over and over until finally, like a cop would you could hear coming in the distance, and like, all of a sudden you got to jam out of there, or we got a flat tire because construction sites have a lot of nails on the road and stuff. So not the best optimal place to learn how to drift. But we go to up in the canyons, up in Angeles Crest Mountains, a place called GMR, Glendora Mountain Road. So that was where we did the Super Street article in 2001, and that's when we got a lot of hate for that because people were like, "Dude, you gave away the spot." It was like a secret spot people would go to late at night. We'd go there, 10 o'clock at night. We would drive and drift until 2, 3 a.m. and drive home, like an hour and a half home. And but it was up in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it was like a 30-minute drive from the bottom of the mountain to the top. So if you crash, there's no one around. There's not a tow truck. There's no cell phone signal, nothing. Someone would have to drive down to the bottom of the hill to get cell signal and then call a tow truck and say, yeah, my buddy crashed his car, 20 miles up the hill there. Like, oh, okay. So you're just sitting there waiting for an hour for the tow truck to come get you or more. But, that's where Benson started hanging out with us. He got his first experience with Dave and his car getting sideways up in GMR. And, and he felt that adrenaline rush, right? And the rest is history with Benson. He got hooked. Yeah. Nadine, she started hanging out too, coming around with Benson. So, but yeah, not many places again back then to go to. Track days where everyone hated us at the track. Like if we did a drift, they're constantly watching you. So you get sideways just a little bit, and all of a sudden you're black flagged. You're called in. You're like, hey, you're done, buddy. Like you can't do that. You're tearing up the track. And it's like, dude, no, that's not. It's not doing anything. But that's what they thought, right? Like your tires is going to tear up the track in 10 minutes. So yeah, and it wasn't until speed trial events when they finally started doing drift stuff and Club 4AG events. And that's when you really started getting seat time and getting better and better.
Did you notice a big difference between like the street stuff and doing the on track? Like,
yeah, I mean, street stuff was usually just one corner you're doing right on the street, at least where we live. And so at the track, you got multiple corners, and that's when you had to learn, like, okay, now I got to learn how to connect these corners. I got to learn how to manji. And
that's a puzzle.
Yeah, exactly. It's a perfect way to put it. You got to put all the pieces together. And that was the real challenge. And that's what I enjoyed, was like I was drove like as I was a competitor against myself. So I was always trying to up my level. And so like I was wanting to learn something each time I went to the track. I didn't want to just to drive and then just go home going like, oh, okay, I guess that was cool. Like, no, I want to go home feeling satisfied. Like, okay, I learned how to do this technique today. Or, like I learned that this on my car is not where I want to be. I need to correct that. Like, it's always a learning experience. So, but yeah, definitely. But when you have subpar equipment, like I was saying, my blue S13, when you have like an open diff or like a crappy VLSD with shot subframe bushings and like little bald 15-inch 205 wide tires, that will definitely humble you. Like it's not until like you can kind of build a car into a place where it's more reliable, it's predictable. I mean, I had stock KA radiator in that thing, and like super thin. It would overheat after a couple laps. It pull in, and I think I had stock brakes for a long time until I got the Z32 fronts. Not that the brakes matter that much in drifting, but I didn't even have adjustable rear upper control arms. So my camber was like probably minus 4.5 degrees in the rear. And my tires would just get destroyed after, just a matter of laps.
Yeah, and your contact patch is nothing. And if you're on like 15s,
yeah. And the 15s were used tires from, the used tire shop I would get for $20. So, they already had 50% life left in them, and they weren't performance tires to start with.
No,
so
like all seasons with like
all season garbage. 205 or 225 wide, and then I started getting into like I got 17-inch wheels. I got some work equipped, and I got some Dunlop W10 tires, which were like the best tires that Dunlop sold at that time, and they felt so good. They were amazing, and Benson can attest to that too. Those were like the tire back then. But yeah, they wouldn't last that long still again because of my rear camber settings, and they were maxed out as far as I could get them to be positive as I could. So finally, companies started selling and importing adjustable rear camber arms, and it was like, oh man, like now my tires will last more than 5 minutes.
That's so crazy. Like I can't imagine a time where adjustable camber arms didn't exist for S chassis. Like that's
Yeah.
like unfathomable, I think, to most people.
Yeah. And yeah, I mentioned this again in Benson's podcast, but it's like you go on eBay, you type in SR20 DET or S13 240SX, it'd be like 0 results or just like 2 results, you know, on entire of eBay, and you're just like, man. So it was definitely a different time period. It was hard to find stuff for your car. You find anything Honda again, right? You could find any parts for Honda suspension wise or brakes. I mean, plus Hondas are so interchangeable, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you
Or
could build a
Legos.
Honda out of 10 different types of Honda cars, right? Like, oh, I have Integra hubs with like Civic Type R uprights and, you know, axles from, you know, CRV or what, I don't even know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like everything's so interchangeable in these cars. But here, not so much. I mean, S13 was like, it wasn't many compatible parts to other cars besides Z32, right? Like you had the VLSD and you had the brakes and not much else
That's
really.
pretty much it. Yeah. The front suspension's completely different.
Yeah.
The knuckles, the rear suspension's completely different.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just it's cool to see how much it's progressed and to the point where it is now again, where you can find anything you need like and get it pretty quickly. Like I see when people post online, like they're at an event, a drift event, and they're like, oh, you know, like I blew my head gasket on my SR. Like, can someone help me? And all of a sudden, like someone shows up there like half hour later with the head gasket for them to swap in or something. You know, it's like,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Different time.
Definitely different times.
Yeah, like I'm sure the thought of having a truck and trailer to like bring your car to and from an event back then was like, what are you, some kind of professional?
Exactly. Yeah, I drove to every event I think I ever did. In my RB25 as well. I think that was part of the fun too, was you're driving a couple hours to the track. You got 4 spare wheels and, you know, packed in the car with your toolbox, your jack, everything you can cram in there. You remove the passenger seat just so you can fit more crap in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw people started trailing in their cars to the track. And I was like, man, these guys got money, you know, like,
yeah,
I'm so jealous, you know.
It took me a long time to get to that point. I think that's missed with a lot of people. Like it's like, because so many people do it now, everyone's like, oh, that's what you do. You get the race car and the trailer and the truck, and they're in, you know, in a ton of debt by their, you know, 6th drift event. And then it's not sustainable because you spent, you know, 50 grand on going drifting and you're can't link the course, you know? Like,
right.
I think it feels a lot better when you work for it and you're like, yeah, it's just, yeah, it's different.
Yeah, I can honestly say I never broke my car to the point where I couldn't take it home out of all the events I did.
That's pretty impressive.
But there was many times when I was driving it home and it was like overheating. You would have to stop like every 5 minutes, let it cool off, you know, for half hour. Or the tires were so destroyed, like you're riding home, driving 2 hours on corded tires, like all the way home. It's just like on the freeway.
I've done that.
Yeah. And people are looking at you like, what is happening here? Like, you know, I've been pulled over before too, going home just with the loaded car, you know, just everything crammed in there with like corded tires.
The car looks like it's bottomed out because you have like a ton of stuff in it.
Yeah. I had a massive exhaust leak.
Doing?
Yeah. And a cop pulled me over and was like, where are you going? Like, what's going on here? You know? Oh, I was coming back from a drifting event. He didn't know what drifting was. And it's like, oh, what? And I'm like, oh, it's like a racing kind of thing. All right, dude. Yeah. He's like shaking his head like, okay, all right, well, get home safely. You know, okay, thanks. So he had some mercy on me. But
that's nice.
I mean, there was one time this is going back to, I think, 98. I was at the Compton street races, represent city of Compton.
So cool.
Yeah, it's like around midnight or something, and tons of cars everywhere. And I think I raced a couple muscle cars and stuff. And everyone lines up on the straightaway where everyone drives, and they're like parked diagonally. And cops would all bust the scene quite often, but you usually get like a solid half hour before you have to move to a new location. So we got the word there was a cop coming, so everyone starts getting out of there. And so I start driving away, and I'm like, well, I'll go an alternate way because everyone goes the same way. And of course, like a cop's going to grab one of those people because there's like a line of 100 cars just trying to get out at the same place. So I go the other way. I'm going around this intersection, and it's a green light. I'm in my blue S13, and I just decided, let's just drift this intersection, on the left, turn green. And so I'm just going through the intersection, and as I'm like drifting sideways through it, I'm looking at the opposite direction where there's traffic. There's like a car in the front, and behind that is a cop car. And I'm literally like just drifting like 45 degrees, just looking straight at his eye line. And I'm like, oh my God.
Your headlights like lighting up the side of the car and stuff.
Yeah, I was literally like probably 10 feet away from his car. I'm like almost grazing his door. I'm just like, dude, I'm such an idiot. So of course he's gonna pull me over. He puts his lights on right away, and so I pull over the side, and I start to get my license and registration and all that kind of stuff out. And so he pulls behind me, and he doesn't. I thought he was just gonna talk to me like, hey, what were you doing, But no, he just opens my door. He just pulls me out of the car by my neck and throws me on the hood, handcuffs me, and just starts yelling, what were you doing? Just yelling at the top of his lungs. He's pissed off. And so he puts me on the curb. People, Dave like drove past, and saw me.
Fuck.
Yeah. And like, we had some friends in the car, and like, oh damn, Mark got curbed, yo, And so I'm sitting there, and it's like, he's looking at the car, he's looking at the engine. He has no idea what he's looking at, but he knows it's not normal. He's looking at the car, and he sees no catalytic converter, and he's like writing, this long ticket out. And he's just saying like, I'm going to impound your car, and you're going to go to jail. I'm going to get a lot of pleasure out of this because, what the hell were you doing? And I'm like, I've never been arrested before. Please just let me go home. I promise I will never come back here. Just please let me go. Okay. Like, I'm a good kid from Thousand Oaks. It's a small town. And he's like, you know what? You cry more than a $5 hooker I had last week. And I'm like,
oh my
what?
God.
And I look at his badge. He was actually the chief. He was the chief of police. And I was like, wow, okay.
You're like,
and then,
hey man, Compton.
Yeah, it was Compton. So he's probably used to this kind of stuff. And and then he's on the radio. He's trying to get a tow truck, and he's like, yeah, I need one here as soon as possible. And they're like, oh, we can't get one for another like 45 minutes. And he was like, he walked away a little bit because he didn't think I could hear it, but he's like, dang it. All right. You know what? Just forget it. Okay. So he comes back over to me, and he's like, since I'm such a nice guy, I'm going to let you go. But here's this ticket, and it's exhibition of speed. You got to see the carb referee, this, that, and the other. There was all these things he wrote down. He's like, I never want to see you here again. Otherwise, I'll take you in. And I'm like, okay, yep. I promise I'll never come back, So that was 2 points to my record.
Ooh.
And then next day, I was such an idiot at this age. I mean, I was 21 years old or something.
Yeah, no one's smart when they're 21.
No, your brain, your frontal cortex still hasn't fully developed.
Yeah.
I think 25 years old is when it stops. So you just make dumb decisions, but that's just, that's how you learn, right? So next day I'm back out in that area, like actually more so Torrance, and my friend with an Eclipse. Eclipses were big back then.
Oh,
the
yeah.
GST, GSX, people like, oh, I just got a front mount on my Eclipse. I got a hybrid turbo now, So my buddy, he had just upgraded his turbo, and he's like, I want to take on your SR, see what this little four banger's all about. I'm like, all right, let's do it. I had more guts than brains back then. So we lined it up, and this was the middle of the day, like in a regular neighborhood, and we raced, and, I barely beat him. But then all of a sudden 2 cops pull out and pull us over.
Oh no.
And it's like, oh my God, this second day in a row, I'm going to get busted. And so the cop comes over to me, one of them, and he says, well, since you won the race, I'm actually only going to give you a speeding ticket. But your buddy, he gets the exhibition speed ticket. That's 2 points because he lost. I'm just like, okay, all right, that makes sense. I'll go with that, But still, that was 3 points in my record in just a matter of like 24 hours, less than that. I was like, dude,
sucks.
I got to stop all this. My insurance rates were through the roof, and I was on probation for a year because of like all these things. So yeah, I'm like, I got to go to the track more and less street stuff.
Yeah. Like I don't know. You when you're that age, you're like, I probably shouldn't, but what's the worst that could happen? And then
right. Yeah. You're way too positive about it.
Yeah. You don't really think about it. You're just like, clutch kick.
Yep. I mean, I listened to previous podcasts where you say there's not many people or cops that would be out your area when you would street drift.
So the place that I would go when I was learning and we would go to the streets was Vallejo, California, which at the time was bankrupt, and there was no active police like Vallejo PD. They only had sheriffs.
Wow.
And Vallejo's not like it's not the worst place, but they're busy. I'll just say that.
Bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, so like we would just go out in like the regular city streets like pretty much the whole night. It was kind of it's kind of crazy.
That's amazing.
But that went away. I think it was only like a few years where it was like that. But I didn't do it a lot. It was like a 45-minute drive, and honestly, I was a little afraid. Still kind of anxious about it. But
do you still street drift?
I haven't in a very I haven't in a very long time. I'll take my car up and down the street near my shop, and I'll like grab the e-brake and make sure everything works every once in a while. As far as like going out for like an evening, the last time I did that, I was with somebody and I was like, let's go. And it was during Super Bowl weekend. In like the Super Bowl was being hosted in the Bay Area. It's probably not the smartest place to be doing stuff, but I went out and had a similar experience. I drifted an off ramp and came around and lit up the back of a cop car with my headlights. And I had nowhere to go but drive past them.
But it's that feeling.
It was in like a super rural area, and I was like, oh, maybe they'll like be nice, but it was like, yeah, they called back up, and like my car had like it was in my E36 before it was red. So like that was the day, that was like the last day that I like drove it around a lot, I guess. I don't know. I was like driving around with the cage and shit, and like it didn't have over fenders on it yet. It was like it just looked like a caged E36 M3. Yeah. So they pulled me over. It's got buckets in it. I'm in like I got the cage, and they're like, what were you doing? I'm like, fucking around. And he's like, so they like wrote me up for the whole thing, and I got a lawyer and like did the whole thing because I was like, well, let's see how this goes if I get a lawyer. And they actually got it reduced to like a speeding ticket instead of like a exhibition of speed, which
you got lucky.
Worth the money. Yeah.
Yep.
It was expensive, but it ended up saving me money down the road. So
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, you got lucky. That reminds me, this was like in '96. I was driving a friend's S13 in the valley in Northridge, and we were at an arcade playing Street Fighter, and like around midnight, like 4 or 5 of us, and my buddy's like, "Hey, can you drive my car just down the street? I want to like hear how it sounds." He gets put a custom made exhaust on it since you couldn't buy exhaust, right? So he had a muffler shop, like put a MagnaFlow, like generic muffler on his car and some piping, and it was just like a K24D whatever, like stock. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll drive down the street. So they're all watching, And I decided to, same thing. I drifted an intersection, but this exhaust was so loud. I mean, I'm sure you've heard some KAs before with like straight pipe and just like, yeah, like, dude, it's just ear piercing, you know?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I pulled in the parking lot. The tires are still like smoking as I'm pulling in to the parking lot. And all of a sudden, like 2 cop cars like pulling behind me, like jumping the curb, like basically they're going so fast to pull in. There's like boom, and had their lights going and sirens, and they're like talking on it, like shut off the car. And I'm like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
So I do that. There's a helicopter above me that comes over that's hovering, and I'm like, oh my, these guys are really going all out, you know? And so the guy comes over and he's like, what are you doing, Mario Andretti? You know, that was like standard thing cops would say back then, you know? And I was like, I don't know, you know, yeah, just like, as you said, kind of just messing around. And so, you know, he didn't pull me out the car like the other guy, but still, like, they weren't too pleasant. And that was going to be 2 points in my record for exhibition of speed. And so I'm like, well, I got to fight this. I don't want to just like, you know, let this roll. And so I went to court and they gave me a public defender. And the lady's like, oh, well, it looks like this code, it can also be translated as excessive noise. So what I'm going to tell the judge is that it's like a loud car stereo that you had. And so we'll see what he says. I'm like, okay. And so that's what she said to the judge. And he's like, oh, just a loud stereo. Okay, yeah, cool. Dismissed. Boom. And I was like, ooh, all right. Like,
wow.
I got off with that one. I got super lucky. So yeah.
Dude, cheat codes on the Goodest.
Cheat codes for sure. You just got the game genie. So yeah.
Dude. Yeah, mine. Yeah, they were like, I could tow your car. And I was like, okay. Like, thank you for not. I don't know. You're like yelling at me. Like, I don't really know how to. Like, you want me to? Like, yeah, this sucks. We did used to go like a lot when I was younger, but I don't know. I'm not that old, but I'm 32. It's kind of like, if I'm gonna do it, it's gonna be somewhere not, you know, where I'm gonna get in trouble.
Yeah, right. I know, like in Chicago, they do a lot of street driving out there, and there's a lot of areas for that, you know, where cops won't show up for a while.
They have it like set up well, I think. Like they have like I was talking to him about the situation that they have, and it's like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. But I think they still get risky every once in a while.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah. It seems like cops are definitely more relaxed out there, though, compared to like California cops from what I've seen.
Yeah, California cops like just they do not like car stuff at all.
No, especially when it's it's an import. It's something that's not like American. You see a Hellcat going super fast or something, and like oh cool, man, it's a cool Hellcat you got. You know,
yeah, carry on, brother.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, what?
Yeah. I mean, knock on wood, I haven't been pulled over yet in the Skyline, but come close. And I try not to goof off, but you know, sometimes you haven't driven the car in a while. You want to stretch its legs, and you know, and all of a sudden, a wild Mustang appeared next to me, and on the freeway, and you wanted to go, and then, but I saw way in the distance. I'm like, that looks like. Is that like a Dodge Charger? You know, it could be a cop car. Okay, well, I'm not going to go for it. You know. And the Mustang kept revving. He's like, wow, 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 wow. And then he just took off. Just, and I was going like 100 or something. And all of a sudden, we got closer. It was a CHP. And he just lit up that Mustang and pulled him over. And I was like, okay, in my older age, I am getting wiser. I can tell, you know. So.
Yeah. 10 years ago, you would have like, fuck it, dude. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
Show this fucking Mustang what's up.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I was younger, my dad, he had a few Mustangs. He had a supercharged, was it 02? They're like factory supercharged, but he put like a smaller pulley on it and stuff like that. It's making like 550 horsepower. And my dad's like, yeah, drive my car, see how fast it is. And I'm like, okay. So he's sitting shotgun and we're in his neighborhood, like a 35 limit road. He's like, yeah, jump on it, step on it, come on. I'm like, okay. So, you know, I just wail on is, Wah! And dude, this thing I had so much torque, and it was just like it's thrust you back in your seat, and you're just like, ugh, like it felt awesome. Like your feet lift off the ground. Like it just had that effect. And before you know it, you're going 100, and I was like, whoa, okay, I better slow down. And I see like in a side street, there's a cop chilling, and I'm like, oh my god, I had the worst luck with cops. And so they pull up behind me. They don't light me up yet. I turn left on a different road, and then they light me up. And so I pull over, and then I don't know what came over me, but it was a female cop. She came up to me, and she's like, "Did you realize how?" The standard question. "Did you realize how fast you were going?" And I just like flipped the switch, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Like my dad asked me to drive this car, and I don't know. I've never driven a fast car before, and I stepped on the gas too much, and it just took off, and I got so scared, and oh my gosh, I just oof. Whew, and she's like, oh, yeah, it's okay. Like, just why don't you swap seats with your dad and let him drive? It looks like it's too much of a car for you to drive. So, just be careful. And I wouldn't drive this car again if I were you. I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, you're right. I got so scared. I'm so sorry. It's like, it's okay. You have a nice day. And my dad's like, whoa, you deserve an Academy Award for that performance. I don't know where that came from, but that was amazing. Yeah, but it's fun to get out of stuff like that, if you can.
It's nice. It's nice when you get one every once in a while. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
I've been trying to stay out of trouble. It's hard to get in trouble in the 4Runner. So, but now that I have this street car coming, I'm kind of like, I'm a little anxious. And also, yeah, my girlfriend got an M4, which is a fucking abomination of a road car. Like, abomination for no, it's good. Abomination's bad. Anyway,
yeah, abomination's bad.
Yeah, abomination of me not driving aggressively on the street, I guess. That's not the right word. It's not helping. It's yeah, it's like a car that could I guess like when you were saying before something about can't remember. Anyway, it's like a car where it's literally like a video game to drift. Like you just like hit some buttons and then like it just steps out and you're like, oh, okay.
Right.
Like you don't really have to work for it that much.
Yeah, the car drives you. You don't drive the car.
Yeah, and it's like heavy, but it's like easy to. It's like very confidence inspiring. So I'm kind of based on like the Hachi thing, on the Corolla thing. Like you said this at the very beginning. It's like a car that you really have to work for to get to drift. And like, as cars get more power and whatever, like I look at that and I'm like, kids that like, those are going to be the cars that they drift. They're not going to have that like experience of like learning to drive in like a Corolla or like a KA240 or, any of those like no horsepower cars that you feel like you're going to die in because they're thin and all the bushings are smoked and like
yeah. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people back then we drove sketchy cars, but we didn't know any better, and we thought we made improvements to safety. Sometimes we're doing things that are worse, like we put in cheap harnesses like, oh, these are better than stock, when in reality it's like, no dude, you're putting in these like $50 fake harnesses that are going to end up killing you instead of actually saving your life, but none of that was quality tested, but
luckily.
And you almost get mad at people that they build these drift cars these days that are they spend 50 grand on, like it's their first drift car and it has 500 plus horsepower. It's set up super well, and one token, you're like, well, you should learn to drive in something underpowered, something slow, and work your way up, and then you really get a feel for driving instead of just jumping in something that's it's not going to teach you anything really. But at the same time, I'm like, man, I wish I could have had that when I was younger, it looks like so much fun, but
and I think there's only going to be more of that as time goes on. It's like people who were into drifting and then they have kids and they're like, okay, well, this is like the setup, like you start here and try, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a carbon copy setup they do of like they look at someone else's setup and okay, I just need these things. Okay, add to cart. Wait for them to show up, build the car, go to the track. Okay, cool. It definitely wasn't like that back then, but again, different times. Things are a lot easier now. So, I mean, thank goodness for Amazon and eBay and all those places. So,
yeah. What do you think? Like, well, I know the progression of driving was a lot slower back then, but what do you think like the biggest game changer was as far as like people's progression in driving in the early days?
I think once the Japanese guys started coming over here, that was a big game changer because we thought we knew how to drift before that, right? Like if you can connect one or two corners, you're like, oh yeah, look at that. Did you see what I just did?
I'm a drifter. I'm the man.
Yeah. And you're in second gear going like, 33 miles an hour, right? Yeah. And that was like if someone saw you doing that, you felt proud. So but then the Japanese guys came over and you realize like, oh man, like you saw them in video, sure, like video option stuff.
It's not the same. Yeah, video and in person is not the same. That's like the one thing that I tell people more than anything if I learned. Yeah.
Yeah, because the camera makes the cars look so like they're going so much slower, if you watch another form of motorsport like Formula One or something, you see it in real life, you're like, dude, like it's night and day. But I remember being at Irwindale for the first D1 event and just how close they were coming to the wall, like still going like 100 miles an hour, just boom, just like inches from the wall. I'm like, dude, like it just blew my mind. And like, I think everyone at that event was just like, how are they doing this? Like with these cars. And like, it was just on another level. And I think at that point, that's when everyone really started focusing more on driving, like improving their driving, and improving the cars too, where people kind of plateaued for a little bit. Like, okay, I got an SR20, I got a diff and some coilovers and wheels, and like I'm good. Like, but then like once guys really started going the extra mile, like the Japanese guys, and again focusing more on driving skill, like Irwindale really, I think, taught people a lot of stuff. I mean, I wasn't the biggest fan of Irwindale because it's an oval, so I always thought to myself, well, it's like the NASCAR track, right? But when I drove it for the first time, I was like, oh, I can see why people like this. It's a lot of fun. You can carry a lot of speed on that oval, how it's banked, and feeling that transition, like at the clipping point when you're like, really like on camber on that bank. It just felt so surreal, like, and then getting close to the wall, just like the D1 guys did. I was like, wow, like that was a new level of adrenaline for me. And I knew like, okay, I had to step up my driving. Like I never thought of myself as like a great driver. I always thought like I was just okay. And, I could get the job done, so to speak. But that's why I always really admired guys like Hiroshi Takahashi from Running Free, because they, to this day, still honing his driving. Still just like, if you watch these guys, how they drive their cars.
Jamming on the guitar and like...
Yeah. But like it's the way they whip around the steering wheel, like how precise and like aggressive they are, and like their foot control, and like these guys are just, again, another level compared to some others. And I think over the years, people have really progressed here in the US, where they know, okay, like, the Japanese style back in the day was like, yeah, doing really long e-brakes, like for entries and things like that, and that changed over the years. It's shallow angles. Right now, it's all about obviously big angle, and like even a lot of Japanese guys these days have V8s in their cars, where you just like back in the day.
Crazy.
Yeah, and that was like that started here in America. Basically, that was an American thing.
The amount of group chats that had a very busy day when Naoki posted his car with like the like ITB V8, and and WiseFab. Well, there was a lot of discussions that day.
I bet. I'm sure there was a lot of people supported it and a lot of people who hated it. But I mean, for me, like, I was never a V8 guy. I always thought, like, I was kind of a purist in that way with Nissans. Like, don't pull, a Nissan engine out to put in an American one. Like, I just thought it was sacrilegious. And, to put in a low technology, push rod, low revving V8, that weighed a ton, like, compared to you're pulling the heart out of the car and you're replacing it with something else. It took the soul out of it for me.
Yeah, you're turning it into a Camaro or a Mustang. Or
yeah, I always thought, like, why don't you just go buy a Mustang or Camaro if that's what you want? You know. But But then it goes back to, well, it's your car. You can do what you want. If you think that's cool, do it, right? So I don't always understand or appreciate other people's builds, but I still respect it. Right?
Yeah.
So
it's hard to explain the nuance of you need RPMs and you need torque helps you drift easily, and then like the high RPM, like the art of like driving at high RPM is like a skill set that I have been chasing. It's the same thing. I have friends that throw LSs in and everything, and like they like it, and that's fucking awesome, and they can drive it and they're fast in them. But I also am kind of a nerd where I like high RPM stuff. I like,
right.
And the biggest one for me is like when you throw like a LQ in an S chassis, like that the iron block like V8 in an S chassis, and it just turns the front end of the car into like a boat anchor, and the car is driving like this, and there's no traction. It's not going anywhere. Yeah. You have all this torque and like no weight on the rear wheels.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that stuff is missed. And it's like being corrected right now. Like people are really like focusing on like suspension right now, because it's like, if you want horsepower, there's a million options for horsepower, but now people are like, okay, we can make power. How do we make the cars go faster? And like we're like in this weird renaissance of drifting where like it's kind of coming back to like they're looking at, like, it's very odd to me because like Japan is kind of like going like the big smoke show way. Like you watch D1 and they're like kind of doing more like smoky drifts, and like they have Formula D Japan, and then like over here we're kind of like building the cars to be fast. It's weird times. I'm really interested to see where it goes.
Yeah, and same here. I mean, where's it going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? I don't know. I mean, I think eventually they'll have to come out with probably a Formula E, group for electric cars. But will people like gravitate to that? I don't know, because maybe they'll miss like the big engine noises of them coming around. Like for me, that's part of the experience, is hearing the engines.
I mean, if I look at it like this, if NHRA drags were electric motors, would there be that many people there watching it? Like half the thing is just the like thunder of those engines.
Yeah. Yeah, that noise
down the track.
Again, going to those events in person, again, you watch it on TV, but going there in person is totally different, because that sound, it just goes through your chest, like when they're doing a burnout.
Yeah. And
you're just like just the frequencies just penetrate your brain. It's just like, you're like, whoa, like it's crazy. Electric dragster, probably won't. All you hear is just like, you're just like, oh, okay. I don't know, but I mean, I know we have to go that direction, right? Like eventually, because with fossil fuels and all that, and the environment. But maybe there'll be some alternative fuel that will come out eventually. That's
what I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Like we have like E85. Maybe there's like some healthier version of it that comes out. They figure out a better way to make ethanol or something. It's,
exactly,
not corn based. It's like fucking potato based. I don't know.
Right. I mean, there's hydrogen, which I think we kind of dabbled with, but I mean, there's been a couple hydrogen cars, but it never really took off.
Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, water is the most abundant thing in the world. So, if we could bake some kind of hydrogen powered engine, that would be probably the best, right?
Yeah.
Zero pollutants, so very abundant.
Yeah.
But
maybe it'll be. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what those would sound like. Like there's like the Toyota has like production cars that run on hydrogen, but I like,
right.
do they make sound? Like I don't even know anything about them. Are they like,
All I know is like I see them on the freeway and I'll be behind one and it would be like water like coming out the back of it, And I'm like, what is wrong? I'm like, oh, it's hydrogen powered. It's just like puking water out of the exhaust, It's so weird. But yeah, usually their cars are ugly too. The hydrogen powered ones, they try to make look different. It's like Homer Simpson designed it.
Yeah, do we need to make them look like a whale because they're run on water? Like,
yeah, I forget the name of the first gen Toyota one. Starts with an M.
I think it's like the Mirai, MURI.
The Mirai, yeah. Toyota Mirai, and the first gen one of that was just like, wow, that is
you guys
hideous.
really wanted to make a statement with that one, huh?
Yeah, you could say that. I think they kind of woke up and the second gen one looked like a normal car. It looks like a Camry or something. I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. It looks
like an aquatic Prius.
Yeah. Which, when Priuses first came out, it was like, oh man, those things are disgusting. Like, but again, they had to try to separate themselves from everyone, saying it's a hybrid. So
yeah, last time I was in Japan, I saw like a bunch of really cool Priuses. Like they had like GT Aero on them and stuff, and I was like,
wow,
that's fucking awesome. And now I want a Prius, and I didn't buy one because I got back and realized those doesn't really work the same here. But
I think a lot more people would buy them here if they marketed the cars in a way where you could get some kind of performance out of them or make them look cool instead of just kind of market them towards the quote unquote tree huggers, right? So
yeah, I mean, yeah, we're hot rodders. Like that's just what America does with everything. Like a startup where they're trying to, like, Uber is like hot rodding taxis, I guess. It'd be a weird way to taxi services. I don't know that example. I don't know. We just like to be like, oh no, this isn't working. We'll just do it better this way. And then I don't see that going away with cars, no matter what we have.
Oh yeah. There's always going to be people like you and I that are interested in that kind of genre. I mean, I would pay more for an Uber if I knew that like a Ferrari F40 was going to come pick me up instead of a Prius. You know what I mean?
I talked about that with my friends. I was like, we were talking about like a Uber, but for like modified cars. And then I was like, that's a dumb idea. But some people would do it, like maybe.
Oh yeah. I would do it at least once, just to say like I did it and I rode in a cool car. So
get picked up from the airport in like a 14 different color S14.
Yeah, with the alignment all jacked up, like exhaust rattling off. Yeah,
you're like holding
no interior,
holding your luggage in your lap.
There's probably a market for that, I'm sure.
Yeah,
with one person or two.
I mean, yeah. Simba, did he drop? I think he dropped Kazuya off at the airport in his S13. Like they got it pretty good out there.
Nice.
Like just imagine driving like a vinyl drift car to the airport to like drop your friend off. Like in California, that's like not a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I see them doing that. Like when I go to the Final Bout events, I see them like, oh, gotta take you to the airport. Okay, hop in my car. And it's just like, man, that wouldn't happen out here.
Yeah.
In SoCal, but I can't imagine going to LAX like in a car like that. Like it's bad enough in a regular car.
Yeah, I don't want to go to LAX ever.
No, it's the worst airport.
They said like most, I think LAX is like in the top 5 list of like most hated places in the country.
I can see that. Yeah, it's definitely on my top 5.
Yeah.
I mean, they're trying to make the airport nicer inside. Like they totally redesigned a lot of it and new construction. I was there just not long ago, but the outside still sucks. It's just the roads. They're always a mess with like buses pulling out in front of you, and just it's just yeah, it's just the worst. But
yeah, I don't know. Next time I've yeah, like once you like I had really bad culture shock when I got back from Japan for the first time. I landed and I was like, oh, where's the baggage claim? And like all the bags come out and they're like nicely placed on like a tray and they're all like evenly spaced out with like the handles facing out. And then I got back to LAX and it was just like people just like chucking bags and you're like, hey, can I have a bagel? And they're like, they look at you like you just like slapped them in the face because you just want to order from the restaurant that they work at.
Yep.
You're like, okay, this is different. But we get to do stuff that they don't. So
that's true. It's very true.
Pick your poison.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, coming back to LAX is always, you're home, but it's just a bad feeling of like I'm home. You're like, damn it. It's the longest drive home. But yeah, I mean, when's the last time you were in Japan?
2019. Just before.
Okay, so not too long ago. Was it right before the pandemic then?
Yeah, we went out. Julian bought a car from Naoki, and he went out to go drive it. And I think he did I think there was like a comp or something, but we ended up me and Aaron Levitt just ended up fucking around in Osaka, having a
nice
wild time. And yeah, do you miss Japan?
I do, because I mean, it's been a while since I've been there, but just I'm sure it doesn't change much in regard to how polite they are. I mean, just they're crazy nice. Like, like you can leave your wallet on the train and like someone will notice and like run out to you, hey, and give it back to you, and all your money's still in it, right?
Yeah. Total
opposite from here. Here that happens, like forget it. You're never seeing that wallet again. They've probably stolen your identity already,
Yeah.
So it just like everything's so clean there, and like just it's organized. I don't know, like for a person who's OCD like me, I know their culture must be a little OCD. The way they, like you said, like the way they put their luggage on there was like evenly spaced. Like everything is like that there pretty much, and I appreciate that. I appreciate how much respect they have for people, and like just with manners, and they put that effort into their cars too. So I think that's another reason why I like Japanese cars so much, because they're so methodical and with their designs and with their quality and engineering. And yeah, I don't know. Like I definitely miss it though. And the food too. I definitely miss the food.
Yeah, it's hard. It's like hard to have a bad meal there.
Yeah. I remember we ate at Burger King a lot there because we were told, gaijin. But it was at the bottom floor of our hotel in Shinagawa. And it was like an Elvis themed Burger King for some reason.
Fuck?
And so, yeah, it was super weird. And so there's like records on the wall and posters of Elvis.
The King and Burger King got together.
Yeah, and neon signs and like Elvis music playing, right? And it's like, I'm in a Burger King. All right, whatever. Ordered food, and I'm like, oh, can I get sweet and sour sauce with that? And he looked at me like I'm from outer space, and they're like, what? I'm like, sweet and sour sauce? Yeah, no. We don't know what that is. I'm like, okay, just ketchup, I guess. There's no super size there. There's just one size. So like the burger's tiny, the fries is like they're gone in 20 seconds. The drink is like 8 ounces, but I'm like, okay, I guess that's just what I'm having for lunch. But everyone smoked there. So like inside, you couldn't see across like to the other side of the restaurant because there was just so much smoke in there.
Everyone's smoking in the Elvis Burger King.
Yeah. So it was definitely culture shock. I was like, whoa. I mean, I kind of dig it, but at the same time, it was weird.
I think the smoking
And
is a lot less now.
yeah, I would assume so. I would hope so. But then I loved how there's like arcades everywhere. I mean, I love old school games, so um, we went to a game center just down the block, and just in the parking lot, there was. Speaking of F40, there was a Ferrari F40 just parked in the parking lot, and it was snowing, and it was just covered in snow. I have a photo of it still somewhere, a film picture I took of it.
Oh my god.
And the license plate just said like dash 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 40 on it, you know.
Oh,
And
that's so cool.
and Dave was with him. He's like freaking out. I was like, "Oh, dude, Ferrari 40, all covered in snow, like 2 feet of snow." And then saw my first R33 GTR in the parking lot too, a silver one. So I was freaking out over that. But then, you know, you go in the game center and it's like 10 stories of just video games, you know, and each one has a theme on it. Like first floor is like puzzle games, you know, second floor is like fighting games, and then shooting games, and then hunting games, and fishing games, train games. You know, you name it. They even had a section for like porn games on one of the levels, you know. But super fun. Oh, driving games obviously as well. I mean, play some cool drift games there. There's one called Side by Side, which is kind of like Initial D, but like I think a little better, in my opinion.
Oh, hot take. Now I want to try that.
Yeah,
I'm sure it doesn't exist here, but
it probably is not. No,
yeah.
I do have video of Dave and I playing it in the arcade at that point, but you can still buy it. I think probably on PlayStation. They sold it on PlayStation in Japan at that point, so I bought a copy of it. But just yeah, the gaming there is just they love it. They embrace it. You know, the arcades anyway. So here it's like arcades fizzled out over time. It's like they're so hard to find now. You know.
Yeah, I think the console kind of killed them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you can play a game at home that's just as good as the arcade, why go anywhere? But I mean, they at least brought Initial D over here, right? Like that was a game in the arcade that was kind of hot for a while, and you get your little card it gives you, you know, like the save your points or whatever on it.
I got my ass kicked every time. I would like go in, I'd like sit down, and I'd be like doing a race, and you know, it'd be like, you know, there's like a new card that I just got, and then like someone who had their card like tucked in on the top would like come over and just be like, "Ooh, easy points, like easy money."
Right.
And they'd join the race and then just destroy me, and I'd like, oh,
right. And it makes you not want to play again because you're like, well, these guys are just gonna, you know, destroy me every time. Plus, I mean, the game didn't drive anything like a real car would. I'm sure you can attest to that. Like,
yeah,
you know. Yeah, it just felt really weird driving it. And people thought though, like who weren't into cars at that point, that's how a car drives. I remember like people like thinking like, oh yeah, I know how to drift because I've done Initial D arcade. It's like, yeah, it's a little bit different, pal. But you know, also racing games have come a long way since then.
I mean, we're still dealing that. I mean, Assetto is a lot closer, but there are differences, and we're kind of dealing with that every once in a while. Someone will feel a certain way about, you know, like a car pack that we're using, and they'd be like, oh, those don't feel realistic, and I'm like you want to have this argument with me? Like I've driven a lot of drift cars,
that's funny,
in different continents, like
right. Yeah, coming from a guy who has never driven a car, you're like, yep,
that's usually what it is too, and you're like, okay, like it's not.
Yeah. I mean, I call those guys bench drifters because they've, you know, never actually experienced it. They just sit on a bench and watch it. But yeah, I never got Assetto. I never bought it, but I always played Gran Turismo since the first one. I mean, the first one came out like in '97, and you know that like changed the whole realm too for racing games, for simulators. So. But
I feel like Gran Turismo brought a lot of people, like Gran Turismo helped fuel the international love of Japanese cars.
Oh yeah.
Because you like all the coolest cars in Gran Turismo were the Japanese cars.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, even kids today, like there was kids a couple weeks back who saw my R32 and they knew it because of video games, you know, and they were like cool 9 years old, you know. I'm just like, yeah, it blows my mind, you know, that video games has that impact. But Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I think driving games do, or good ones like Assetto, can build your skills. I've seen some guys who,
Definitely, no question
pra-
there.
yeah, they
Aceto's helped
practice it.
me a ton.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I've never driven on it, but I've just seen guys who just, yeah, they jump on that and they go straight into a car and they're just like, boom, they get the hang of it straight away. It's like, oh,
Well, if
it actually does work.
you ever want to get set up, you can join our Discord and get stupid with us.
Yeah, the only thing that stops me from doing that is I know I'd want to have like a nice rig. And I know that's not cheap. You're probably going to spend a couple grand on like a good setup, right? So I'm like, could I play video games or could I put that into my real car? You know, like that's the conundrum there.
Yeah, I mean, I've been like, you're like, oh, I want to do RC drifting, and I've been talking about it for like 2 years. But then every time it comes time to buy I'm like, drift car. Every time.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, RC drifting is expensive too. I mean, you can easily spend $1,000 on setting up a nice car. I mean, some of these setups these guys have these days though are insane. Like the in-car. I'm not sure if you've seen this. Like they have in-car cameras for these RC drift cars, and they wear VR glasses. Yeah, and it even has like the steering wheel that's turning. And you watch this like on Instagram, and you're just like, dude, these guys. It's crazy. Like you feel like you're in the car. Sometimes you have to take a double take to make sure it's not a real car. Like, but
I mean, how cool that's kind of the future. Also, like, if we're not able to do, I mean, not everyone. Like, I feel like drifting is going to get less. Like, it's really accessible now. It was even more accessible like a couple years ago. More people want to do it, and it's becoming less accessible. And like as that kind of goes off, there's going to be all these other avenues like shit like that, or Assetto. Like it's we got options. Yeah, but I'm with the real thing until I can't.
Yeah, I don't think you can replace that adrenaline from the real thing with a game or with RC. I mean, I'm sure it might come close, but it's when you're in control of like a 3,000-pound machine going like 100 miles an hour, like sideways, a couple feet from someone's door. Yeah, that's a new level.
There's nothing better.
Yeah. I mean, just think of it this way. What would you be into if you never got into drifting? Just think of like where would you be right now? Like what would you be into?
Maybe a rapper or like a fashion connoisseur. I don't know. I have no idea. It was always going to be cars. Like every time I got into something with cars, I would get distracted by something else and always end up back in cars. It'd probably be some kind of time. It'd probably be like Time Attack. I do think Time Attack's cool, especially as I'm getting older and I'm like really enjoying the process of setting cars up and that kind of mindset. Like I enjoy getting on my laptop and like going through my like engine, my standalone software and like, oh, what sensors can I add? Like, I figured out the resistance of my like fuel tank, and I figured out how to do I calibrated my speed sensor, put that in the ECU. Like, so like that's the kind of nerdy stuff I'm enjoying more as time goes on.
Yeah.
And something. Time Attack wasn't really it for me. Like once I found drifting, I was like, okay, this is the craziest thing. I need to do this. But I did Time Attack in a front wheel drive Lancer, so that probably wasn't all that adrenaline inducing.
Right. Yeah, that's a little different. I mean, Time Attack is fun. I've done that I built my old black S13 for Time Attack, and like 280 horsepower SR, big AP brakes on it and roll cage and stuff like that. Good suspension, and it was a lot of fun to drive on the track. I mean, not many people drive or build Time Attack S chassis cars. Usually you think of an S chassis, your mind goes to drifting straight away, right? Like, so most people who build Time Attack is mostly like Hondas and S2000s are really popular, and Evos and STIs. So to be like the only S chassis at the track, like, keeping up with these guys or going faster, I was at Laguna Seca chasing down a R35 GTR and passed him, and I was like, a lot less horsepower, and that was a good feeling. So it's a different kind of adrenaline though, because it's more control. The car's more control. It's predictable. So it's not like a feeling of like, is this thing going to explode? You know what I mean? But it's more of an adrenaline rush of just like catching people, and bettering your lap times. You're racing against the clock. So
so being somebody who's done both, like if you had to pick one, what would it be?
I mean, which would I prefer? Like if I had to choose?
Yeah.
Man, it's so hard. It's like having kids and saying who's your favorite kid, I like aspects from both, so it's hard to say. I'd say it's probably a 50-50 split, because time attack is also a lot cheaper because your tires last longer, so you're not buying tires every single event or multiple tires. So I don't know, but still, there's no feeling I've ever experienced like drifting, and that will never change. There's nothing that can replace that. So I'd say if I had to choose, I'd say probably drifting.
Me too. I mean, what else? I don't know. I guess that's probably a pretty obvious guess for which one I would pick at this point.
Yeah. I mean, well, saying like, if you weren't into drifting, what else would you be into? Like for myself, I don't know, rock climbing? Well, probably not, because I'm afraid of heights. I've never been skydiving, so I would never want to do that.
Yeah.
Go-karting, like the professional go-karts. I'm not sure if you've ever done that. Like not the cheap electric ones that you do for 10 minutes. I'm talking about like the real deal ones.
I got to do a season of it when I was 13.
Oh wow.
So that helped with my like driving competence, I think, a bit. But it doesn't. It relates because you're carrying momentum and all that stuff. But yeah. I got to drive, like when I was 13, they let me drive one of the 125s. And
nice.
And it was horrifying. It was it was the fucking scariest thing that I had ever been strapped to or not strapped to in my life at that point.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would feel about it today, but I'm a little tall. Like one of my friends, Sherry, she just bought a kart. She's a drifter. Very good. She and her husband started going to K1 speed like religiously. And I was like kind of laughing it off, and I was like, yeah, this fucking guy's like spending all his money on like electric indoor go-karts. Like, what is that really going to do? She ended up going so much that now they do like GPs, and she goes and wins them. She has the fastest lap time ever set at the South San Francisco like K1. And then she went and bought like a kart to go race. And I was like, okay, they cheap seat time, and she learned, and I stand corrected.
I mean, yeah, they can definitely teach you skills, like proper apex, proper like how to carry your speed, like you said, especially important in slow cars if you're gonna get into drifting. I think like there's so many skills that transition from grip driving and karting, like if you do get into drifting, that you can take away and kind of gain advantage on people if you already know how a basic car control works. Like, oh, if I push the brakes this hard, like in a corner, it's going to do this. It's going to shift the front, weight to the front of the car. Or, just again, carrying your speed and where I'm going to apex and that kind of thing. So I always encourage people who like say they want to get into drifting, like, well, if you learn how to drive a car fast first, like road race, you're going to pick it up a lot easier, I think, for drifting, because you're going to have that sense of like, okay, I know what a car can do. I know its limitations, and now I can explore what it can do when it's sideways,
Yeah. Once we break those limitations.
Yeah.
Of going fast.
Yeah. I mean, I think people who just start right away drifting, they don't have that experience. I mean, some pick it up right away, right? Like if you're into Assetto Corsa or whatever, you can jump right in a car and before you know it, you're already doing pretty well. But I don't know. Like, I know there's drifting schools around. Like, I know there's one in Willow Springs, and people pay to go there and drive a car and thrash on it all day, and you don't even have to touch it. Like, they change the tires for you and they do all that kind of stuff, which is cool. I'm sure it's not cheap. I don't know how much it is, but and they have those in Japan too. So
I feel like that'd be the place to go do it.
Yeah, I'd much rather do it in Japan. And I'm sure the cars are better set up, and just the tracks are probably going to be better conditioned and more fun. So,
did you pick anything up from your time in Japan as far as like driving technique that you brought back, or did you kind of already like gather everything from when D1 came here? I don't know the timeline. I don't know if you went to Japan before or after D1 came to the US.
So I went to Japan before D1. So yeah, we went in '98 for the first time. D1 came here. What was it, 2001 or 2 or something? I want to say. So but once D1 came on the scene here, that's when I learned a lot more. In Japan, I learned a few things that's from like, hearsay kind of thing, or just watching others do it. And you're just blown away of like, whoa, like, again, you're watching someone's feet or their hand control, or how fast they shift, and like, but everything's so controlled at the same time. It's not like chaotic. It's like, maybe you know what I'm talking about. When you're at a level where you feel comfortable with your car and you're driving, things are almost in slow motion, and you're kind of just like doing them, and like it feels like you're relaxed. I think when you're not relaxed and you're trying to drive, that's when things get out of control and you're making mistakes. You're trying too hard. You're putting too much input in the steering or too much throttle or whatever.
Yeah, the flow state is like everything is just relax is the best way to be.
Yeah. Same thing with grip driving too. The more relaxed you are, like things more just your brain can process. I mean, same goes for anything, I guess. Like in life, when you're relaxed, you can think more straight. But especially drifting, I think it's more important. So if you're nervous, again, like we go back to the competition stuff. Like when I was so nervous, like you just forget everything you're doing. You're just like, yanking on the e-brake for no reason, or just, I'm like, what am I doing? Like,
I did that 3 weeks ago.
No,
you're just like, why the fuck am I e-braking right now? Okay.
Yeah.
Do I even know how to drive? Well, I think we covered a lot of topics. I'm sure you got
I think we did
stuff to do. Is there anything we missed that you want to get out there to the people that made it all the way to the end?
Yeah, if you're still listening, thank you. Hopefully you're not falling asleep, or maybe this is putting you to sleep and that's why you are still listening, because you like it. But no, thanks. I want to thank you, Palmer, for having me on. I met you at Final Bout out here a while back, and so you're one of the guys who like is in this for the right reasons, and like you're passionate about it, and like you bring more fans to drifting because of your attitude and like your driving, and like you're not afraid to go out and get the car you want, an E36, right? And like not fit the mold. So I think that's why like we were able to have a conversation and like just kind of build that respect. And then
Thanks,
like when
man.
you asked me to do the show, I was like, dude, yeah, of course,
Yeah, you and well, Dave was giving me a hard time. He's like, "Hey, man, you have the worst sound ever," and like I took that to heart, and I went and like got a bunch of shit. You can tell Dave I said that. Like I was like, in the moment I was like, and then I was like, I swear to God, I was like on fucking Google the next day. I was like, Dave said my audio is bad. Okay.
You know what though? I wouldn't take it to heart. Dave likes giving everyone a hard time. So
no, it was good. I need that feedback because like like people just assume like I'm drift dude and it's just gonna be shitty, and like if I don't know that it could be better, like same thing with the car stuff. Like I'm like always trying to increment things and make them better. Like same,
Yeah.
I'm sure you can relate. And I really appreciate you doing this. Like fuck man, like you're one of the people who made drifting what it is, and you were able to harness like the nuance and the cool shit and like influence the people who have influenced the people who influenced me. You know what I mean? So it's like that's the big deal. And the not just me, like the entire generation of drifters owe you at least a beer, you know? Like so.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. If that's the case, I'll have at least 2 beers. So, no, for real. Yeah, thanks. And hopefully, I'll see you at a Final Bout event or some other event coming up in the near future.
Gotta get you in my car. I want to see what you think.
Yeah, I'd love that.
You should drive it, and also, yeah, we'll make that happen.
Nice.
There was something else I was going to say, but I can't remember. So
just don't think about it, dude, and it will come to you. Just think about baseball.
Fuck. Yeah, it's gone. But
it will come to you as soon as we stop this. You'll be like, oh, absolutely. Yeah. I do that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like in a work meeting and I'm like trying to bring something up and then I just totally forget. And I go out the meeting and I'm like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that was that good idea that I had someone else say it. You're like,
yeah,
it's fine. God, someone said it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just appreciate you, man. And thanks for doing this. Well,
thank you. Keep doing what you're doing, dude. Keep on having more seasons of this because I'm digging it.
Yeah. Oh, I remembered. I was going to say, if you haven't listened to your episode with Benson on the Silly Mania podcast, do it. Because I listened to it and I was like, holy shit. This guy fucking lived like all of our dreams, like before we even knew that that was the dream, you know? So like the stories that he has on there are crazy and fucking awesome. So definitely check it out.
And I would also add to that if you want to watch it on YouTube, we have like hundreds of photos from that era and videos to go with the stories we're telling. So it's probably best to watch it on YouTube.
Awesome. And they did a ton of work, I'm sure, to make that happen.
Yeah. Well, I sent them like 1,000 files of just like videos and photos to make that episode. So
that's the sacred texts, the sacred documents.
Yeah, I had to dig out an old computer I haven't turned on in like 12 years to find that stuff. So,
oh, it's so cool. I'd be like, Benson, put that somewhere, like watermark all of it, put it on your website or something, because people want to see that stuff.
For sure.
Yeah. Thank you for everything you've done for us. And we'll hang out soon.
Sounds good, man. Thanks, Palmer.
Bye.
See ya.